Chapter 101, Dragon Instinct. Orion didn't reply. Still calmly walking forward. He flung out his wand. Gale Lance. A spinning spear of wind spiraled toward Orion's chest. In that moment, Orion's body bent backward like a spear, letting the attack skim past his face with barely an inch of movement. And in that moment, it felt as if time froze across the entire arena. A spinning spear of compressed wind had come within a hair's breadth of piercing his chest, but he flowed out of its path with the reflexes of a predator who had already seen it coming. His black hair blew back from the sheer force of the spell brushing past his face. Gasps erupted all around the crowd. He didn't block it, he just dodged it? That was a tier 1 spell. How the hell did he move like that when he hasn't even enhanced himself with any spell? Aaron's smirk faded, replaced by a deep frown. His fingers tightened around his wand as he cast another spell and then shouted, "TCH. Wind spikes, double cast." 2 piercing darts of compressed spinning air launched from either side of his body, while a third spell formed behind him with a twist of his free hand. Orion's gaze flickered, his senses locking onto Aaron's minor movements. He felt it all before Aaron even finished casting the spells. The trajectory, the pressure, the gaps between each attack, it was as if he could read the flow of mana itself. Just as Aaron cast the spells and they were about to hit him, Orion moved. 1 step forward and shifted his shoulder. A slight tilt of his head. And distancing his feet from each other. All 3 wind attacks missed completely, brushing past his figure with such closeness that students thought he'd been hit, until they saw him standing tall in the aftermath, utterly unharmed. What the fuck is that? Someone cried from the crowd. How the fuck is he even dodging? It's like he already knows where the spells will come from. Instructor Viren's eyes behind his glasses gleamed sharply. His reaction speed is too fast. It's better than some tier 3 awakeners I've seen. Another instructor standing beside him whispered, "No, it's more than that. His reaction speed isn't just fast, it's inhumane. His instincts, they're on another level." Amelia stared from the side of the arena. Her gaze locked onto Orion's back as he moved. His entire aura seemed to have changed. Long gone was his carefree air. The only thing that remained was the deathly calm of an apex predator. His fighting style, it's not refined. He hasn't trained for long. But, those dodges, they are terrifying. He moves more relying on his instincts than his mind. She tightened her grip on her spear. This isn't a fluke. He's already won relying solely on that absurd reaction speed. Aaron felt his throat go dry. Each spell he launched, Orion weaved through it. Sar the novel, F.ir.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Each trap he prepared, Orion avoided it like it didn't exist. What is he? Why can't I hit him? He screamed internally, panic setting in. Sweat beaded down his temple. Did I mess up by challenging him? Orion finally stopped walking. His gaze locked onto Aaron with unblinking intensity. And then he moved. No warning. No spell casting. No flashy sword style. Just a blur of motion as he stepped into striking range and swung his sword down, not with the blade, but with the blunt backside. Aaron instinctively cast a wind barrier, but Orion's movement twisted at the last moment. His sword dipped beneath the shield with precise control and snapped upward, striking the joint of Aaron's shoulder with monstrous force. Crack! A sickening sound echoed across the arena. Ahhhh, followed by Aaron's scream as he was flung sideways. His wand flew from his grasp as he crumpled on the ground, clutching his arm in agony. Silence. Then the instructor raised his hand. Match over. Orion Hellstorm wins. The crowd erupted, half in stunned admiration, the other half too overwhelmed to even cheer. Did he slice his shoulder? No, you blind idiot. He hit him with the blunt side of the sword. And yet he broke the shoulder of a tier 1 mage while not having an affinity rune? Arya exhaled deeply, her heart pounding. She didn't know whether to cheer or worry. He really is something else. Amelia narrowed her eyes. Her lips parted slightly as if to speak but stayed silent. Aaron lay twitching, unable to even rise due to the pain. On the other hand, Orion exhaled and began to suppress his dragon's instinct again. He knew it would be troublesome if he didn't suppress it quickly and someone came to disturb him at this moment. The world regained its original color, but Orion felt as if he just got half blind. Shaking his head, he turned and walked off the platform without so much as a glance toward the defeated Aaron. Master, that was so cool. You destroyed him without even trying your best. Greater than over equal to 4 all less than over equal to. Orion inwardly shook his head. I did go all out. The only thing I didn't use are my treasures. I have no other card except my dragon instinct for a direct clash. And from the looks of it, your physique is already stronger than that of a Tier 1 Awakener. But we still don't know where your limit lies. We'll find that out later. For now, he trailed off as he walked down the arena. The students parted before him like waves before a ship and he soon came to stand in front of Arya. Didn't I say that I would take care of it? He smirked and playfully said. Arya eagerly nodded her head. Yes, you were amazing there. Even Amelia's eyes held faint hints of admiration seeing how Orion dominated a higher-ranked Awakener so easily. Arya tilted her head at Orion curiously. Seriously though, what's with that? Did you go through special training as a kid? Like some kind of battlefield upbringing or something? Orion chuckled and scratched the back of his head. Let's just say. I have a few tricks up my sleeve. Hee and by trick you mean I am a true dragon emperor which gives me absurd reflexes, right, master? Let me keep some mystery, Lumi. Arya looked at him suspiciously but didn't press further. Well, mysterious or not, you just made your name more famous in the eyes of those nobles, again. Orion nodded. Anyway, what's next? I doubt we're done for the day. Arya blinked, then clapped her hands lightly. Oh. The first lesson is about to begin. Oh? Are we finally going to take classes? She grinned. Yeah. Just one formal class today. From tomorrow, we're allowed to freely choose which subjects and lectures we want to attend based on our focus. But this first one's mandatory. It's on the fundamentals of elements and affinity runes. Orion's eyes flashed with interest. Finally what I wanted. That would be quite useful for me. Oh, it will be, Arya said, turning and leading the way back toward the main building. They'll teach how affinity runes can be formed, how elements behave inside the sea of consciousness, and the proper method to control their growth. Most people never get this information from regular tutors. Chapter 102, Elements and Affinity Runes. The trio walked down the polished marble path, the sun reaching high above their heads. Plus, Arya added with a wink, the first lecture will be given by Vice Dean Hargan himself. Orion paused for a second, then smiled. That's better. Our time won't be wasted and we'll get the most useful knowledge for ourselves. Arya laughed. Yep. Better not fall asleep. They soon reached the grand doors of the main building again amidst their laughter. Orion was the most excited out of the bunch, as if he would finally learn how to form affinity runes. They stepped inside the main building once again, but this time coming for their classes. Their footsteps echoed faintly as they followed the wide corridor with students here and there. There were remarkably fewer students now than when they were going for their entrance ceremony. Orion couldn't help but notice the luxurious design of the main academy again. The ground was filled with smooth marble floors with runes carved all over the place. But that didn't make it messy, instead, it gave it a scholarly beauty. The walls were decorated with paintings of various times. Some had different races, some had wars against the demons, while some had past deans of the academy. This building's definitely overkill, Orion muttered with a speechless look as his eyes scanned the towering pillars and rune-inscribed banners that shimmered slightly in the presence of mana. Overkill? This is the bare minimum for a top-tier academy, Master. We're talking about Thunder Peak Royal Academy. For all. Yeah, my broke self wouldn't know about this stuff. I only attend my local government university. He inwardly shook his head. Arya giggled beside him. First time I walked here, I got lost twice. Each floor has over 20 classrooms, not counting the specialty halls. Orion raised an eyebrow. Then how many times did you get lost in your royal palace? Arya elbowed him lightly, rolling her eyes. I won't get lost there. I was born and raised in the royal palace, you genius. Orion chuckled as the group continued on their way. Soon they reached the wide double doors of the lecture hall. The moment Arya opened them, the sound of murmuring voices washed over them like a wave. The interior was massive. Rows upon rows of curved tiered seating stretched upward like a miniature coliseum. The room could easily seat 500, but today, nearly 300 students, this year's full first-year batch, had already gathered and were scattered across the seats in cliques and factions. Nobles dressed in finely tailored robes stuck together, while commoners huddled near the edges or upper tiers. A faint divide was present in the air itself. And at the very front, 10 large, plush seats were set apart in a semicircle, clearly meant for the top-ranked students. Orion's eyes flicked toward them instantly. 7 were already occupied. Sylvia Stormbolt leaned back in her seat, arms crossed, seemingly uninterested in the crowd around her. Garen Harrington sat like a boulder in his seat. Thaliron Norwin was flipping through a thick herbology journal while Elias Marrow rested his chin on his hand, looking bored. Cale Duskfield and Tavian Greyridge chatted quietly, but all of them kept their distance from the 10th chair occupant. NYSS Blackwell. Dressed in flowing black robes, veil faintly swaying like living shadow, she sat motionless with a posture so elegant it seemed sculpted. Her fingers were clasped over her lap, and her gaze was focused straight ahead. But what drew Orion's attention most was the empty space around her. No one sat beside her. Despite being among the top 10, she was alone. Students even in the back rows leaned away slightly whenever their eyes met hers, as if she carried an invisible darkness they didn't want to touch. Orion's eyes narrowed in thought. So that's how it is, huh? Students not only respect her but fear her? A chance. He didn't hesitate. Without a word, he walked straight past the crowd and took the seat right beside NYSS. Whispers broke out immediately. Wait, isn't he afraid of getting misfortune from her? No one sat next to her before. I heard House Blackwell practiced occult arts. Arya blinked in surprise for a second, then smiled as she followed and sat beside Orion on the other side. Amelia sat beside Arya, spear resting against the side of her chair as her eyes calmly scanned the room. NYSS turned her head slowly toward Orion. Her black eyes, ringed faintly in kohl, met his. There was no malice in them, no hostility, just indifference and a faint hint of curiosity. You don't fear sitting beside me? She asked in a quiet voice, nearly drowned out by the murmuring hall. Orion smiled. Should I? She paused for a second. You should. Most people do. Then I'm not most people, am I? NYSS nodded her head without any change in expression and turned her head back to the front. Arya leaned toward Orion and whispered, Are you after her? She'll probably become the goth queen of the academy soon. I'm just taking a seat, he said casually with a smile. Can't let the front row go to waste. Before more chatter could break out, a sudden burst of pressure descended over the hall. It was heavy. Almost suffocating. Like thunderclouds gathering over the sea. Every student quieted down instantly. From the side entrance behind the podium, Vice Dean Hargan entered. Clad in the same deep azure robes from earlier, with the stormcloud embroidery glowing faintly at the seams, he walked forward calmly. Every tap of his staff echoed like thunder. His mere presence crushed the murmurs before they even formed. And as he stepped up onto the stage, he swept his eyes across the entire room. You have proven your talent, he began, voice deep and reaching every corner, but today, you learn what that talent actually means. Hundreds of students sat straighter. Even the nobles looked genuinely attentive. Even if they had taken classes at their noble estates, they didn't want to miss this chance. Orion leaned forward slightly as his gaze sharpened. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Arya also curiously looked at Hargan, wondering if he would teach her something she didn't learn in her royal palace. Vice-Dean Hargan stood at the center of the stage, gazing down at the hundreds of students with eyes that had weathered wars, watched armies fall, and seen more talent wasted than he had cared to count. Today, he said, his voice like distant thunder, we begin with the truth. Not a soul dared speak. All the nobles and commoners sat like statues, silently listening to each of Hargan's words. Most of you were praised back home. You were told you're talented, gifted, that you're destined for greatness. He slowly raised his staff and tapped it once on the platform. A ripple of mana spread outward. And most of you were lied to. The ripple expanded into a translucent dome of mana. With another gesture, it turned into a glowing chart that hovered above the stage, 8 elemental glyphs arranged in a ring. Today's lesson will cover the foundation of all cultivation, elements and affinity runes. Orion's eyes lit up. Search the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Yes, this is it, Master. Pay attention. Greater than over equal to nabla less than over equal to, /. I will if you let me. He annoyedly said. Chapter 103, Details of Affinity Runes. Arya leaned forward eagerly. Even if she had learned about this before, hearing it again still amazed her. Even NYSS turned her head slightly toward the projection, her pale fingers resting calmly on the desk. Amelia, though silent, watched with eyes sharper than blades. Hargan's voice was calm now, like a teacher finally slipping into rhythm. There are 4 tiers of elemental classification. He gestured at the chart. One portion of the glyphs lit up. Core elements, or rather, basic elements, 8 in number: fire, water, earth, wind, thunder, wood, metal, and ice. These are the elements accessible to almost every race. They form the backbone of all affinity rune construction. Then another 6 symbols shimmered above. Advanced elements: gravity, sound, shadow, illusion, blood, decay/rot. Very rare even in the entire kingdom. Rarely found. Just as he finished speaking, another 2 symbols lit up above. Top elements: light and darkness. Super rare. One top element user is rare to find even in many kingdoms. Finally, 5 glowing sigils appeared above them all. More abstract. More foreign. More supreme. Ultimate elements: fate, time, space, life, and death. There are a few others, but these 5 are the most well documented. Few possess them. Fewer survive long enough to master them. And there is only a single being who is confirmed to possess an ultimate element. He let the information settle for a moment among everyone. Commoners scribbled frantically as this knowledge wasn't publicly available, while nobles listened to Hargan's words with fire in their eyes. Hargan began again after a moment of breather. Your elemental affinity determines how easily you can manipulate the corresponding element, but only through the creation of an affinity rune can you truly begin cultivating it as your own. He pointed toward Orion, specifically at his chest. The moment a user awakens their affinity, that elemental power condenses into a globe in the sea of consciousness. Around this, an affinity rune is carved. This rune is unique to the individual, shaped by their soul and nature. Once formed, it allows you to channel, enhance, and eventually manifest your element externally. He raised his voice slightly, letting it echo through the hall. Without an affinity rune, your elemental affinity is dormant. It is like having blood but no veins. Some students gasped in realization. A few nobles looked nervous. Orion's mind raced. So the rune isn't just a symbol. It's a circuit, my soul's language written around my affinity. Exactly, Master. That's why formation is so important. If you mess it up, it affects your casting speed, elemental control, and even mana efficiency. Your first attempt was rather reckless. Ugh, give me a break. I just arrived in this world and was reckless. And, Hargan added, tapping his staff once more, a rune can be reforged, but only through pain, effort, and a much higher understanding of said element. His eyes swept the class slowly. But some of you may break that limit. His gaze briefly flickered toward the front row seats, pausing briefly on Orion. This concludes the first part of today's lecture. Take 5 minutes. After that, we begin the real work, Affinity Rune Formation Theory. Orion leaned back slightly in his seat, letting the information from Vice Dean Hargan's lecture sink in. Behind him, murmurs began to rise as the students processed the tiers of elements and the truth of Affinity Rune Formation. Arya scribbled something into a small enchanted notebook while Amelia sat still, likely conversing with her spear. So that's how it really works, Orion mused. The globes in the sea of consciousness are affinity globes, all right. I had figured out at least that much. But layers? I didn't know that. Hee, of course you didn't, Master. You went ahead and tried forming one without even knowing how it worked. That's like throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it becomes a magic circle. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. TCH, stop reminding me about that. I at least nearly formed the first layer, right? You brute forced the origin glyph through sheer willpower and instinct and nearly made it. Most people stop there and call it a day. But without the next 2 layers, it's like strapping a rocket engine to a paper kite. That's why the affinity rune was dissolved. Orion chuckled inwardly, then glanced around. Several students nearby were whispering in confusion, likely nobles who had basic elemental knowledge but not the full picture of rune structure, and commoners who knew nothing at all. Even those from influential houses were now frowning with furrowed brows, as if their tutors had skipped half the syllabus. Arya nudged him lightly, whispering, "Pretty amazing stuff, right?" Orion tilted his head and smiled. "More than amazing. This answers a lot of questions I didn't even know I had." She giggled and nodded. Vice Dean is better than the royal tutor I had. But he hasn't touched upon anything that I don't know. Most noble households don't teach their young ones all the details and let them fend for themselves in the academy to hone their mind and willpower. No wonder all the students from noble households were just as eager to learn here as the commoners, Orion said, turning his eyes back to the elemental projection above the stage. She said, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. The deeper the foundation, the higher you climb. This is the start. Orion let her words linger in his thoughts. Foundation, huh? I have so many affinity globes in my sea of consciousness that I don't even know when I will be able to use them to their fullest potential. I need to understand more about this affinity rune so I can forge a truly pristine foundation. I still have that origin mana pool to strengthen myself as well. Ohoho Master's got a full collection of globes ready to go. Let's hope you don't blow up trying to carve 7 of them. That would be embarrassing. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. He felt his lips twitching. Even I'm not that reckless. And I won't have so many issues if you don't distract me. A hush fell over the room again as Vice Dean Hargan returned to the center of the stage, raising his staff once more. Sir the Nafire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. 5 minutes have passed, he declared, voice regaining its thunderous edge. Let us now move to the second and most vital part of your foundational lesson, Affinity Rune Formation Theory. He gestured again, and the elemental glyphs hovering above the stage rippled and faded. In their place appeared 3 concentric circles, each pulsing with slow, rippling light. This, he said, is a simplified model of an affinity rune. The innermost circle lit up in deep blue. At its core lies the origin glyph. This is the core layer. Your sea of consciousness houses these affinity globes, and when you try to form your affinity rune around it, it instinctively forms an origin glyph through raw emotion, soul resonance, and spiritual intent. You do not need runic knowledge to form the first level for the origin glyph. Many students leaned forward in their seats, fully invested in this topic. A few looked relieved, as if glad to know they wouldn't have to memorize arcane scripts right away. But, Hargan continued, this layer alone is insufficient. Think of it as a heartbeat without arteries, raw power with no direction. Chapter 104, First test the second layer, now glowing green, lit up around the core. It shimmered with intricate lines and angular symbols. The runic matrix. This is your first wall. The most average people will ever reach. It is the structural layer, the circuit board of your rune. It determines how mana flows, how efficiently you can cast, how stable your element becomes, and how well you resist its backlash. He raised a brow. To form this, you must learn the runic language. However, despite hearing his words, not a single student wavered. They had all come to this prestigious academy not to shame their name but to leave it in the annals of history as one of the greatest beings this kingdom had nurtured. A quiet wave of groans rippled through the room. The very mention of language made several students slump in their seats. A few already had their heads in their hands. Hargan nodded his head, his eyes filling with a satisfied light. Learning the runic language is not only useful for forming your affinity runes, but it will stay with you for your whole life. All spells need this runic language to be engraved in your sea of consciousness. Damn right. It's not like shitty math. Orion finally felt good about failing in maths, since that subject never really came into use in his adult life. Hee, were you looking for an excuse for that all this time? Ring n equal to ring n equal to. Ignoring Lumi, he continued to inwardly mutter, so I need to learn the runic language first. And this is also the reason why most commoners can never form their affinity runes. They have no proper way of learning the runic language and they just keep stacking unstable circuits. Exactly. This is the plight of the poor. But if the kingdom distributed this knowledge freely, there would be a lot more chaos. I guess that's true. And this is also the reason why they teach it in specific places and try to control it as much as possible. Then I'll master that language. Let's see how long it will take me. The third and final layer, the outermost ring, lit up with golden light. Search * the novel, ir.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. This, Hargan said, his voice calm and slow to let the students better absorb his teachings, is the sigil veil. This fuses your glyph and matrix into a single functional rune. Without this, spell casting is impossible. You cannot channel mana outward. You cannot engrave spells. You cannot evolve further. He looked around the room. Most of you will take weeks to a month to even learn the runic language. And even longer to form an affinity rune. And yet, all of you will try. As you should. He pointed his staff toward the ceiling, and the ring spun, merging briefly into a dazzling full rune, complete and harmonious. This, he said softly, is your first step toward becoming an elementalist. Then, he let the illusion fade, and the classroom plunged into thoughtful silence. Tomorrow, you begin your study of the runic language. If you wish to carve your rune, learn the language first. That will be all. Saying this, he turned to leave. All the students heaved a sigh seeing him leave. However, his footsteps paused as he turned around, his face forming a subtle yet clearly amused smile. Oh, I forgot to mention. Those who can't form their affinity rune within a month will be expelled. This is the first test. You will get the second test when this ends. The silence that followed Hargan's parting words was the kind that comes only after a thunderclap, raw, stunned, and deafening. Then came the chaos. What the fuck did he just say? He said expelled. We have to learn a whole language and form the affinity rune in just a month. Is he mad? The entire Colosseum-like hall erupted. Students leapt from their seats, panic flashing across many of their faces, especially those seated toward the back rows. Mostly commoners and lower-ranked nobles. Their expressions ranged from confusion to rising dread. Orion sat still, chin resting on his palm as he watched the storm unfold with a mild expression. Heh. I expected a difficult beginner test, but this is straight up a death sentence for most students here. Hee, that's the fun of elite academies. No safety nets. Just climb or die trying. Ring in equal to ring in equal to. Arya stretched leisurely beside him, as if she were watching a play, and looked over with a smirk. So, Mr. Topper, you think you can do it? Orion raised an eyebrow, amused. What, the whole learn the most ancient magical language in the world and forge a soulbound spell circuit within a month thing? Yeah, sounds doable. Arya leaned in, resting her elbow on her desk with a teasing smile. Oh? Confident, are we? You're not worried at all? I'd be worried if I were relying on someone else to teach me everything, he replied smoothly. But thankfully, I have a good brain in my head. Hee flattery gets you nowhere, master. I'm charging you 2 compliments per translation from now on. I meant my massive sea of consciousness, not you. How are you even helpful in this? He snickered inwardly and said. Arya giggled. I'm sure you can do it. Otherwise, all the students here will be doomed. Emilia, seated on the other side, slightly nodded her head in agreement with Arya. Her calm, icy expression hadn't changed in the entire lecture. Meanwhile, across the room, the disparity between the elite and the rest was painfully obvious. Most of the top nobles, especially those from Marquess and Duke houses, remained utterly calm. Some even looked bored. Many of them had already formed their runes under private tutors before arriving. This announcement changed nothing for them. A few leaned back smugly in their chairs, watching the panic with disinterested eyes. Figures, a student near the middle rows muttered bitterly. They're already ahead before the race even began. But this isn't fair. How are we supposed to learn an entire language on our own in 30 days? We don't even know what the letters look like. Is this how Thunder Peak Royal Academy weeds out the untouchables in one go? Orion shook his head slightly. No. It's not just weeding them out, it's a forging trial. The Academy wants battle-ready mages, not sheltered geniuses. Exactly. Pressure makes diamonds, master. Though, honestly, some of these kids are going to become gravel. For all. He resisted the urge to laugh. Arya leaned closer again and whispered playfully, but seriously, think you'll manage it? Not even a tiny bit of panic? Orion shrugged. I've already messed up one attempt and got nearly fried trying to brute force an affinity rune. This time I know what I'm doing. So no, not panicking. Arya blinked. Wait. You already tried? Yup. And lived? Barely. She gave him a deadpan look. You really are crazy. Confirmed. Our dear master is clinically insane, reckless, overconfident, and completely lovable, see. Don't make me find a seller for you, Lumi. You can't, I'm permanently yours now. Remember? Despite the chatter and rising tension across the hall, Orion remained calm, already thinking about what to do once he returned to the mansion, as he would need to wait another day to learn the Runic language. He glanced to the side. NYSS sat beside him, still perfectly still, her gaze unbothered by the chaos. Chapter 105, leaving him, I didn't get much opportunity to chat with her. Well, whatever, I have plenty of time ahead. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. As the chaos of the lecture hall slowly began to settle, Vice Dean Hargan had long since vanished like a storm passing over a battlefield, leaving hundreds of young hopeful students to pick up the pieces of their shattered resolve. Students rose in uneven groups. Some stumbled toward the exits in a daze, others whispered curiously among themselves, while a few simply sat frozen in their chairs, as if someone had sucked the life out of them. Meanwhile, at the front, Orion stood up with a casual stretch, arms above his head. That was fun. Arya giggled, you have a very strange definition of fun. Strange but accurate, Orion replied, letting his arms drop as he rolled his shoulders. Finally got to learn how it works. That's what matters. I wonder how many will last till the end of the month, Arya mused, her gaze trailing over the whispering commoners in the upper rows. Emilia's gaze followed after Arya's, looking at all the commoner students sitting at the back. Only the capable will remain. That's why this academy is here. You should head back with the princess and practice again. There are too many prodigies in this generation. And nearly 4 more are on the same level as you, only in this tiny academy. The old spear gently advised as Amelia nodded her head. Orion's eyes briefly flicked toward the 10 front seats. NYSS Blackwell still hadn't moved. She sat like a porcelain sculpture, her black nails resting on her knee, her expression unreadable. For a moment, he wondered if she was even breathing. Fascinating girl. No ripples in her thoughts, no shift in her eyes. Either she's numb or monstrously self-controlled, Orion mused inwardly. Oh, are you intrigued, Master? Another future harem member unlocked? I'll toss you in the void if you keep acting like a dating sim interface. Fine, fine. But you can't deny she's interesting. With a last glance toward NYSS, Orion followed Arya and Amelia out of the hall. The trio walked through the marbled corridor. Their steps echoed in the now mostly empty main building, the sounds of students' panicked discussions still faintly audible behind them. I'm heading to the library, Arya suddenly said as they reached the central atrium. I want to check if they have new scrolls on advanced runic formations. Do you love reading or just going for the new scrolls? He curiously asked. She giggled and answered him, hee, of course I love reading. That's the place I can get the most information from. Orion raised an eyebrow. You'd probably read the entire library if they let you live in it. Arya gave him a smug look. Who says they don't? With a wave and a mischievous wink, she spun on her heel and headed down the side corridor. Amelia nodded toward him before following her quietly. Left alone, Orion stretched once more and turned toward the exit. Except, he took a wrong turn. Wait, this isn't the way out, he realized after a few turns. He now stood before a long and round hallway opening into a circular plaza bustling with activity as students in groups walked here and there. The scent of roasted meat, herbs, and spices filled the air, and steam rose from the food stalls lining the edge of the courtyard. It was the academy cafeteria, well, the open marketplace version of it. A tiered pavilion stood at the center, with tables and chairs arranged beneath floating orbs of soft light. Dozens of students sat around, laughing, eating, or loudly discussing the Rune deadline test they'd heard about. There were not only freshmen but also old students hearing about the misery of new students with gloating looks. Their test wasn't as hard as this, after all. Around the perimeter, elegant signs in flowing script advertised dishes like thunder-fried beast ribs, spicy. Spirit root noodles with manna broth. Herbal porridge from elven land. Crimson flame dumplings, warning, very hot. One booth even read, Sweet Dreams ice cream, temporarily enhances meditation. Orion blinked. Okay, this. I didn't expect. Oh, food. Master, I vote we come here next time. That dumpling place is totally whetting my appetite. You don't even have a mouth, Orion muttered, though he was already eyeing a particularly fragrant skewer turning over magical fire. He didn't enter though, as he was already late and needed to head back home. However, he still walked around the outer circle, taking mental notes of what each stall offered. Elven porridge. He muttered before heading toward the stall. There, a beautiful elf was making porridge using vegetables and manna water. Excuse me, can you pack one portion of it for me? Orion went ahead and politely asked. The elven woman turned around and beautifully smiled, yes, of course. That would be 50 common-grade mana crystals. He looked inside his storage ring, which held 100 common-grade mana crystals. His lips twitched looking at his poverty, but he still took out the crystals. Here, please pack it so it lasts a while, he said while giving her the crystals. Sure. One packed serving coming right up. She turned around and got busy with her work again. Orion patiently stood outside, waiting. However, he soon noticed that the stream of students coming to this stall had halted, but the gazes in this direction were increasing. Looking around, he saw other students pointing fingers at him and discussing in hushed whispers. He just shook his head and decided to ignore them. The occurrence of this was bound to increase in the future. The elven woman brought forth a sealed package and gave it to him. You really stopped my business, huh? She chuckled and said. Orion shrugged his shoulders. They'll be back once I leave. It's actually more profitable for your business, as more people will take notice of it now. The elven woman giggled beautifully and nodded. That might really be the truth. I hope you come around again. Orion smiled and lifted the package higher. If your porridge is good enough, sure. She held her head high with pride. That, I'm sure you will like. It's one of the best porridges of this academy. Orion smiled and turned around. We'll see about that later. Saying that, he put the food in his storage ring and left while waving his hand. The elven woman looked at his back for a second before busying herself with her work again. Eventually, he exited the cafeteria plaza through the west gate, the massive golden emblem of Thunder Peak Royal Academy hanging above him. Did you buy the porridge for Seraph? Orion nodded his head while heading toward the exit of the academy. Yes, even she might get bored eating moonberries daily. And since this is something from the elven forest, she might like it. Are you sure it's from there? What if that lady was scamming you? Eyes closed face. Orion shook his head. Do you think she would dare to falsely advertise in the Thunder Peak Royal Academy? I guess that's true. So what plan do you have for tomorrow? CTHOvalfire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. I need to learn more about the Academy. Especially that transcendent tablet I heard of. He thought and glanced back at the center of the Academy, where the rumored transcendent tablet was placed. Chapter 106, Stats. We didn't get any concrete information about it today, but maybe we can find more tomorrow. Orion gently smiled as he reached the pathway that led toward the gate. Yes, but I'll be more busy tomorrow. I need to learn Runic language. I wonder how it will be like. It won't be like learning English or Spanish for you. You'll actually have fun learning it due to your comprehension. He looked forward. The sun was dropping below the horizon as evening approached. The entire Thunder Peak Royal Academy was bathed in a golden hue as he walked toward the gate. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. We'll find that out tomorrow, he calmly replied and passed beneath the gate with his hands behind his back and a thoughtful look on his face. What are you thinking about, Master? Show me my stats. Been a while since I last checked them, he said. Aye. Limitless System V3, Lumi. Host, Orion Hellstorm, Primus Zalzarion Draconis. Title, Perfect Being, Limit Breaker, Heir of Two Thrones, Bearer of Twisting Fates, Elemental Freak. Age, 1/9000, Soul Age, 20. Race? Bloodline, Human Emperor, Thunder Dragon Emperor, Fire Dragon Emperor. Physique, Human Emperor's Constitution, Fire Dragon Emperor's Constitution, Thunder Dragon Emperor's Constitution. Soul, Human Emperor's Soul, Fire Dragon Emperor's Soul, Thunder Dragon Emperor's Soul. Energy Source, Mana. Rank, Awakened/Hatchling. Mana Channels, 9 primal mana channels, universally adaptable conduits capable of channeling all known energy forms. Passive abilities. Mark of Fate. Fire Affinity, Tier 7. Thunder Affinity, Tier 7. All other elemental affinities, Tier 6. Draconic Instinct, Suppressed. Dragon's Might. Supreme Mental Endurance. Active abilities. Eye of Revelation, Appraisal and Bloodline Analysis, CTH Novel, F. IR.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Fire Dragon's Breath. Thunder Dragon's Breath. Treasures. Soulpiercer Sword, Bound to Soul. Bonesteel Sword, High-Grade Treasure. Inventory, 10 out of 10. Damaged World Tree Seed, Supreme Grade. Strange Stone, Unknown Grade. -600 tons of meat, Common Grade. Bonesteel Sword, High-Grade Treasure/Tier 9. Moonberry X9 955, Common Grade. Thunderstrike Bow, Common Grade/Tier 8. Emberstone Staff, common grade / tier 9. Spatial blink rune, uncommon grade. -3 lives morning dew, uncommon grade. Convergence sigil, legendary grade. Gambling, 71 draws used, 7 SP remaining. Chronicle of Trials, 2 quests. The Forgotten Archive. I really need to do something about inventory space. I've got too little of it. How much was the cost to upgrade it again? 900 SP, Master. He thought for a second before continuing, can you show me the other treasures that you put in my storage ring? Or rather just show me some high-level ones which are useless to me. Give me a second, Master. For all. Storage ring. Golmheart pendant, tier 7. Solar flare pendant, tier 8. Spirit imbued lens, tier 7. Shadow step boots, tier 8. Should I list more, Master? Show me more treasures around tier 7. Sure. They continued chatting as he strolled down the outer steps of the academy gate, and soon, in the distance, the familiar sight of a sleek black carriage came into view. Lucan stood beside it, arms crossed with a bored expression. His long coat fluttered lightly behind him as he gazed at the walking beauties in the distance. Edgar, meanwhile, stood casually with his eyes closed. The moment Lucan spotted Orion approaching, he grinned and straightened. Young Master. Back in one piece, I see. From the commotion earlier, I thought you might have burned the arena down already. Orion smirked. Tempting as that was, no. I simply broke the shoulder of a noble and may have terrified a few other students who had similar thoughts. Edgar raised a brow, intrigued. A good start. As expected of young Master. Lucan whistled. Already picking fights, are we? He picked me, Orion replied with a shrug. I just taught him why that was a bad idea. Edgar nodded slightly, as if approving. And the first lecture? Exactly what I needed, Orion said, stepping closer. Elements, rune structure, and the real work begins tomorrow with learning the Runic language. Lucan scratched his chin. Runic language, huh? That took me like 2 weeks to learn back then. It's quite an interesting subject. Edgar chuckled, I still prefer my sword's language. Orion chuckled. And you speak it pretty well, Uncle Edgar. Lucan looked up at the academy walls. Then the first gauntlet has been thrown. A month to succeed or be expelled? Exactly. It'll be a fun month. Let's see how the students do next, Orion answered lightly as he pulled open the carriage door and stepped inside. Edgar stepped inside with Orion while Lucan took the reins cheerfully. The horses neighed once before beginning their descent down the paved road toward the mansion. Inside, Orion settled into the soft interior, his arms resting behind his head as he gazed out the small side window. So, how does it feel to officially begin your academy life, Master? Greater than over equal to degree. Nothing much. It's only been a day. I need more days to decide how I feel about this. Orion turned his head toward Edgar. Oh, Uncle Edgar, can we head to the market first? I want to sell a few things. Edgar raised an eyebrow. Are you short on money, young Master? You just need to tell me. Our house isn't short of money. Orion softly shook his head. I just want to sell some stuff. Edgar nodded. If that's what you desire. Lucan, you heard the young Master. Aye, going to the 4th ring now. Lucan's energetic voice came from the outside. The carriage rolled smoothly down the slope leading away from the towering gates of Thunder Peak Royal Academy, the rumbling of wheels muffled by enchantments woven into the 2nd ring's road itself. From the window, Orion watched the grandeur of the capital city unfold. Nobles traveled atop beasts, rune-lit signs hovered over tall buildings, and merchants shouted over some enchantments keeping their goods chilled or steaming from time to time. His eyes followed a group of armored knights crossing a skybridge as if it were nothing. Even after a few days in this city, Stormspire still hadn't lost its charm. They passed through the 3rd ring checkpoints, manned by polite but sharp-eyed guards, and soon rolled into the outskirts of the fourth ring, the commercial heart of Stormspire. "And we are back, again at the fourth ring," Edgar said with a calm nod as the carriage slowed down near a broad stone plaza. "Did you enjoy your last visit here?" Orion chuckled and nodded, "Of course. How can I not enjoy haggling with merchants here?" Lucan pulled the carriage to a stop beside a stone-walled rest area covered by a large piece of blue silk. The area had a small inn, benches, and a watering trough enchanted to refill on its own. "All right," Lucan said, hopping off. "I'll stay here and, polish the horseshoes. They looked a bit dull earlier." Orion gave him a flat look. "Horseshoes?" Lucan nodded seriously. "Terrible condition. Unforgivable. I'll do my best to make them pristine." "Right." Orion turned away before he started laughing. Edgar stepped down from the carriage and gave Lucan a side glance that said "You're just lazy," but said nothing. "Follow me, young master. There is one particular establishment here that offers proper rates and doesn't cheat customers. Though no establishment would dare to cheat House Hellstrom." Chapter 107, Runesmiths Use Hammers? Orion followed him across the bustling marketplace. It was still just as bustling and busy as the last time he had visited the place. Rows of stalls and shops stretched down either side of the stone path, each with glowing mana lanterns hanging at the corners as evening approached. The air was thick with the scent of metal, parchment, and food. A few runesmiths hammered away in open forges, their work shielded behind magical barriers to keep the heat from scalding passers-by. "Runesmiths use hammers to make weapons?" He looked at the smithy and inwardly muttered. "Duh. Isn't that obvious? Why do you think otherwise?" "Grandma is a runesmith." Search * the novel, F.ir.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Sigma, surprised face, winky face. "Right, I can't imagine her hammering like this." He hurriedly shook his head to get rid of the thought and quickened his step. Eventually, they reached a wide, two-story building with a dark wood sign reading, Delner's Chamber of Commerce. The shop's emblem, a stylized open eye atop a coin, glowed softly with an identification enchantment. The entrance was guarded by twin golems, stone statues shaped like armored knights. They didn't move, but their eyes flashed with awareness as they scanned the two who passed between them. Arya was right. There are scanners everywhere. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of cedar and polished steel. Rows of glass cases lined the walls, displaying orbs, scrolls, weapons, and trinkets pulsing with faint magical light. A few noble customers were already browsing deeper within, attended by sharp-suited assistants. "Delner's place is old and reputable," Edgar explained quietly. "If you're selling high-tier goods, they'll treat you properly." Just then, a well-dressed middle-aged man with a trimmed beard stepped forward. His robes shimmered faintly with detection runes. "Welcome, sirs," he said with a respectful bow. "I am Harvin, one of the trade assessors here. May I ask what type of business you wish to conduct today?" Orion offered a polite nod. "I have some enchanted treasures I wish to sell." "Of course. Please, this way." Harvin gestured toward a side room, private, warded, and soundproof. Once inside, Edgar stood by the wall while Orion stepped forward. "So, what are the prices of Tier 7 and Tier 8 treasures?" Harvin's eyes flashed upon hearing the high tier of goods. He considered for a moment and replied, "Tier 7 goods range from 100 high-grade mana crystals to 400 high-grade mana crystals. As for Tier 8, they go for 400 to 1000. Orion nodded and took out 3 items from his spatial ring. He placed them one by one on the polished blackwood table. Golmheart pendant, Tier 7. Spirit-imbued lens, Tier 7. Shadow step boots, Tier 8. Harvin's eyes flickered with interest, though his expression remained neutral. He immediately cast a scanning rune over the items. Soft ripples of pale blue mana hovered around each object. All well maintained. No spiritual damage, no tampering, runes intact, he murmured. "These are valuable, young sir." He tapped his ring, and a slate appeared before him. Golmheart pendant, defensive type, rare but not unique. Likely around 350 high-grade mana crystals. The lens is more niche, but rare for spiritual appraisers, perhaps 280. As for the Shadow Step boots. Tier 8, mobility-focused, nearly flawless runework. It would go for around 700. He raised his head and made his offer in a calm voice. We usually buy things at 70% the market value of these treasures. His eyes drifted toward Edgar as he continued, but since you are from the Hellstorm family, I will increase the offer. I will buy them at 80% market value. That comes to 1,064 mana crystals. I will round it off at 1,070 mana crystals for you. Orion turned his gaze toward Edgar, who nodded back at him, clearly telling him it was a good deal. Well, it's a decent price. I was expecting to get 60% of it. But this is good as well. The market value of these goods is enough for now. Hee, it's like selling used loot in an RPG shop, master. But with good rates. He tapped the table once. Alright. I'll take the mana crystals. Harvin bowed. Very well. The transaction will be complete in a few minutes. As Harvin stepped out to prepare the payment, Orion glanced sideways at Edgar. Was that fair? Edgar nodded and said in a calm tone, you got a good deal. Some shops would have offered merely 50 to 60%. Orion exhaled a sigh. He wanted more mana crystals, but if he continued like this, then his heart wouldn't be able to handle such huge losses each time. Harvin returned a few minutes later with a small, rune-inscribed crystal box held delicately in his gloved hands. He placed it gently on the table and tapped a rune on its surface. The box clicked open with a faint hum, revealing its contents, a single storage ring. 1,070 high-grade mana crystals, Harvin said with a slight bow. You can scan the storage ring right now to verify it. They are freshly refined, not circulated, and suitable for both spellcraft and trade. Orion stepped forward, picked up the storage ring, and scanned it. It was a low-grade storage ring, and inside, the entire space was filled with high-grade mana crystals. Not bad at all. Master just made a fat stack. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to, / will you blow it all away in gambling again? Inventory, he replied with one word and wore the storage ring on his finger. Harvin bowed again. It was a pleasure doing business. Should you require appraisal, auction services, or bulk trades in the future, feel free to return. We might, Edgar responded with a short nod, then gestured toward the door. They stepped out into the evening-lit street once more. There was still quite some time before the sun fully dipped below the horizon. No point lingering. I'll explore more once I have more time. They walked back in silence until the carriage came into view. As expected, Lucan was reclining beneath the blue silk shade with a cup of juice in hand, clearly having done nothing with those terribly dull horseshoes. Welcome back, Lucan called with a grin. Make a fortune? Yes, enough to hire someone to clean those terribly dull horseshoes, Orion replied, climbing up. What are you saying, young master? You have me with you, why would you want someone else to do this dirty work for you? Lucan immediately entered his bootlicking mode. Edgar followed him in while shaking his head, as if saying, nothing can be done about you. Lucan just shrugged and hopped to the driver's seat, taking the reins. Back to the estate then. The carriage rolled forward again, the rhythmic clatter of wheels and gentle neighing of the horses accompanying the three of them into the evening. Orion looked out the window with a thoughtful look. Will you buy the porridge again tomorrow, master? Of course. It's called self-care, Lumi. Or in this case, elf-care, Orion replied playfully, cracking a grin at his own pun. I take it back. You're disqualified from the dad jokes contest. That was awful. Humph. You just lack refined taste. Lumi just speechlessly got silent as the carriage soon arrived back at the estate. Chapter 108, Inadequate Sword. As soon as the carriage came to a stop at the door of the mansion, Orion stepped down and stretched his limbs. Looking around, he saw that the evening sun was about to set. He thought for a second and turned to look at Edgar. Uncle Edgar. Yes, young master? Do you have time for another round of sword practice? I don't want to miss days. Edgar's brow lifted slightly, a faint smile forming at his lips. You're not tired after everything today? Lucan jumped down from the carriage and said while puffing his chest out, it's our young master after all. He can go for another 300 rounds and he won't get tired. Orion grinned in agreement. If anything, I'm more eager to train. I can't afford to lose now after building my reputation in the last few days. Edgar laughed out loud. Ha ha ha, that's our young master. Let's go to the training ground. Woo, another evening of sweaty swordplay. Just don't pass out like yesterday, okay master? It's better to pass out in the embrace of two beauties than sleep alone. Master, you pervert. // He chuckled and followed Edgar into the mansion before heading toward the training room. The trio entered through the estate's wide doors, the warm glow of mana lanterns lighting the polished floors with a soft amber hue. Their footsteps echoed faintly down the hallway as Orion and Edgar parted ways with Lucan, who loudly declared he needed to check on the wine cellar for research purposes. Orion rolled his eyes. Together, he and Edgar made their way toward the training hall in the west wing of the estate. The corridor leading there was lined with old paintings of famous duels, knights crossing swords with mythical beasts, and even one scene of a thunder dragon locked in combat with a sword-wielding warrior. A sword wielder fighting a true thunder dragon, Must be a legendary figure if not dead, he inwardly mused. He knew how truly frightening true dragons could be, after all. It could just be a painting, master. Or maybe the true dragon was a young one? Well, whatever. I need to learn how to hold a sword properly before fighting anyone. As the two stepped into the training hall, the familiar scene of weapons lining the walls greeted them again. Edgar walked toward the center of the hall, already stretching his arms. So, how did you feel using the sword today? You used it against that noble brat, right? Orion followed him and casually reached for the standard steel longsword he had been training with the day before. He gave it a few test swings, then frowned. It feels too light. Edgar turned to look at him thoughtfully. Too light? Yeah. Yesterday I didn't notice it because I was still getting used to the basics. But after fighting a decent match, now it feels like I'm swinging a twig, Orion said, rotating his wrist and staring at the sword as if it had personally insulted him. Edgar chuckled, that's a good sign. Means your body is stronger than the beginner sword apprentice. Oh, look at you, master, outgrowing beginner gear already. What's the next step? Swinging a dragon like a club? Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Orion ignored Lumi and looked over at Edgar. Do you have something heavier? Edgar stroked his chin, then walked to the weapons rack and pulled out a large greatsword, a blade nearly 5 feet long and twice as thick as the standard one. Try this. It's a training greatsword. Not enchanted, but weighted for strength training, he said, handing it over. Orion grabbed the handle with one hand and lifted it easily. He tried a few test swings. The weight was satisfying, but something felt wrong. He frowned again and gave it a few more cuts through the air. Too slow, he muttered. I can swing it, but the balance is off. It drags too much. Doesn't match the style I'm aiming for. Edgar nodded, unsurprised. I thought that might happen. You don't seem like a heavy blade user. Your reflexes are your strength, not brute force. I saw your fight with the young noble. Orion raised an eyebrow. How? You entered the academy? No, Edgar chuckled and took out an orb, turning it around as he infused it with mana. The orb lit up and a screen floated above it. See this. Inside the screen were scenes from Orion's fight, from start to finish. Orion looked at the screen with surprise. Damn, a hologram? And of such high quality? Feels like those OLED monitors I used to see in shops. So this is the recording orb I heard about? It's quite good, the quality is superb. Edgar nodded and put away the orb. That's how I know how you fight. So, what do you plan? I don't think this sword suits you. Then I need a sword that's heavier than this stick. Orion lifted the original longsword, but still lets me move fast. Edgar crossed his arms. Then you'll need a custom blade, forged to match your fighting style. I don't think weight is the issue here. You need a metal dense enough to suit you while it's forged as a longsword. That's not something you'll find in a normal weapons rack. CTH Novelfire. Any *T website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. So what do I need? Orion asked, stepping back and planting the greatsword into the floor with a soft thud. Is it the material? Or the runes? Both, Edgar said. You need a forge that can handle high-tier alloys. Materials like bone steel, wind silver, or even mithril composites. Then, you'll need a runesmith to inscribe the internal channels, weight control runes, shock absorption layers, mana conduction circuits. That's what turns a sword into an extension of your body. Orion raised an eyebrow. Sounds expensive. Edgar grinned. It is. Good thing you're broke, master. Time to grind side quests for Demoni. Asterisk. Heh, are you forgetting who I am? Orion replied with a smug smile inwardly. So, any runesmith you recommend? He asked with a smirk. Edgar chuckled, yes, of course. And the best one available in this kingdom. Orion proudly nodded. Right, my grandma. Edgar laughed out loud. Haha, correct. She would be more than happy to forge a sword for you. You can ask Lady Celine later. Good. Then until I can get a custom weapon, Orion said, raising the longsword again, I'll just make this work. Edgar stepped forward with a grin. That's the spirit. The two of them began their evening practice again. Edgar forced Orion's body to adapt to the sword as he sparred with him from time to time or let him swing his sword hundreds of times at once. Sweat soaked his back within minutes, but his smile only widened. There was a strange joy in training, the joy of progress. As he swung his sword in front of him, the sound of air slicing rang out. Orion exhaled a sharp breath and let his arms fall to his sides. The longsword in his grip was soaked with his own sweat. Every muscle in his body burned pleasantly, the kind of burn that only came from repetition and from progress. He tilted his head back, sucking in lungfuls of air. Chapter 109, Relaxing Bath. Edgar wiped his hand and leaned on a wooden training staff, a satisfied smile on his face. You're improving fast. Your body is learning how to swing the blade naturally instead of you forcing it. That's good. Orion nodded his head, his black hair slick with sweat. Still a long way to go. Yes, Edgar said, laughing. But the road looks promising. Phew, master, I almost overheated just watching you. You're like a sweaty dragon-shaped popsicle now. Greater than over equal to less than over equal to. That doesn't even make sense, Orion muttered inwardly, but he was too exhausted to argue with Lumi. He sheathed the sword back onto the rack and gave one last glance at the training dummies along the walls, some of which were clearly worse for wear thanks to his overzealous swings. With a final nod to Edgar, Orion turned and made his way out, each step feeling heavier than the last, as if he had just come out from the gym after leg day. The sun had completely set by now, as the moon began rising above, casting a soft glow through the tall windows. Mana lanterns flickered to life one by one as he passed them, illuminating his path back to the east wing. The polished floor beneath his boots gleamed, and even the silence of the estate felt peaceful after an hour of rigorous training. As he approached the hallway leading to his room, he saw two people standing there. Rena stood with her arms crossed and a playful glint in her eye, while Fiora leaned against the wall beside her with a longing look. Orion smiled, looking at the two of them. Looks like they missed me quite a bit. Well, you are more late today than even yesterday. They must have missed you. Oh, young master is back. Rena's eyes lit up as she saw him coming, quickly giving him a bow and continued with a smirk, "You seem, as if you just fought a war." She suppressed her laugh, looking at his sweating appearance. Orion looked at her with a flat look. "Careful, or I'll hug you." She recoiled dramatically. "Oh no. Whatever will I do after that? Spare me your sweaty vengeance." Fiora stepped forward, her nose twitching slightly. "You stink," she said, while inwardly thinking something else, "He smells so nice." "Huh. I was training," Orion said with a tired smile. "I need a bath. Badly." Rena chuckled, "Then come with us. Taking a bath before sleep is a good habit. We already prepared the water." Orion raised an eyebrow. "Already? How did you? We saw you go off with Uncle Edgar again." "It wasn't hard to guess," she said with a proud nod. Come on, come on." Fiora stepped forward and reached her hand to softly drag him toward the washroom. Orion raised an eyebrow at her unusually brave act. Why does Master seem so charming today?" Fiora blushed while wondering, as they led him toward the washroom attached to his room. The doors opened to a soft hiss of steam. The bath chamber was a luxurious circular room carved from deep gray stone, its walls etched with runes that softly pulsed with mana. In the center sat a large pool, the water gently bubbling from a constant infusion of heat runes below. Vents in the walls released calming herbal scents, all high-grade herbs from Celine's garden. Orion smirked and raised his hands, motioning for Fiora and Rena to help him undress. Fiora still couldn't help but blush slightly even after all this time of helping him take a bath, especially today, when for some reason he looked even more handsome to her. Rena nonchalantly stepped forward and helped him to undress before Fiora joined. The bath chamber echoed softly with the bubbling of enchanted water and the gentle noise of steam drifting through the mana vents. Fiora and Rena moved with ease, already having done this numerous times, guiding Orion to a smaller platform near the back wall beneath a gentle rainfall spout, a kind of enchanted shower that mimicked mountain rain. The water, heated and infused with herbs, poured in smooth streams over his shoulders, gliding down his sweat-slicked body. Orion let out a slow sigh as the water hit his skin, steam curling around his lean body. His muscles relaxed under the warm water, but the soft hands that reached out next were what made him shift slightly. Rena stood behind him with a mischievous glint in her eyes, holding a smooth cloth in one hand and a bar of glowing soap in the other, infused with mana-cleansing properties. "Stand still," she said, her tone filled with amusement. "You'll stink less after we're done with you." "Hey, I don't stink that much," Orion muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. He was already sinking into the sensation of the hot water running down his back. Fiora mumbled softly, standing at his side now, barely able to meet his gaze as she ran a warm soaked cloth down his arm, carefully cleaning away the sweat. Her face flushed pink. "You don't smell bad," she added under her breath. "Oh my master, your maidens are serving you so diligently tonight. You are one damn lucky dragon, you." "Quiet, Lumi," Orion murmured inwardly. But even he couldn't stop the subtle smile forming at his lips. Sir the Oval Fire. At website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. After quite some time, they stepped back and gave a nod. Orion exhaled slowly, eyes half closed. "All done," Rena said, tilting her head. "Now get in before you collapse again." "Yeah," Orion replied, voice low. "Thanks." He stepped into the steaming pool, sinking slowly into the herbal-infused water, letting the heat envelop him. "That sigh of relief just now was too sinful, master. Don't go drowning in pleasure now. You are the only host I have. //////////// Don't worry, even if I drown I'll take you down with me. Degree. Orion leaned back against the smooth stone edge, his soaked hair slicked back, eyes slowly closing. The warmth soaked into his bones, washing away not only the sweat of training but the fatigue of an entire day packed with action, surprises, and new knowledge. "Feels like I could sleep right here," Orion mused quietly. "Master, you do realize you're not waterproof, right?" You can't respawn in this world. Get up if you're going to pass out. Eyes closed face. 5 more minutes, he replied inwardly with a lazy smile, completely ignoring Lumi's panicked tone. But it wasn't Lumi who roused him. A soft hand touched his shoulder. Master, you'll get lightheaded if you stay in 2 long, Fiora whispered, her voice gentle but insistent. He blinked open his eyes slowly. The dim lighting shimmered against her pale skin and glinted off the tips of her slightly damp blonde hair. Her face was close, and for a moment, Orion found himself captivated by the concern in her blue eyes. He sat up with a deep exhale. All right. I'm awake. Fiora offered a faint smile and extended a towel toward him as he stepped out of the pool. Rena had already prepared a set of fresh, comfortable clothes for him, soft cotton pants and a loose white tunic embroidered subtly with Hellstrom house patterns. Arms up, Rena said, already moving to towel off his dripping hair. Orion followed without complaint, allowing both girls to dry and dress him like a pampered young lord. Chapter 110, Requesting Sword. His earlier smirk had faded into a more relaxed expression, fully enjoying this rewarding bath after an intense training session. There, Rena said with a grin once she fastened the last tie. Our handsome master is back again. Looking even better. She gave him a wink. Orion chuckled at her words. Stop before I let it get to my head. You should eat dinner before letting it go to your head, she giggled and said. Fiora let out a small laugh from the side, adjusting her sleeves. Come on, dinner's ready, master. The 3 of them exited the room and made their way down the lantern-lit hall toward the dining room. The aroma of food already reached halfway down the hallway as his stomach growled audibly. Someone's ready to eat, Rena teased. I've been doing one thing after another since morning. Attending the ceremony, beating up an idiot noble, attending class, trading treasure, practicing swordsmanship, Orion grumbled. At this point, I deserve a feast. He reached the dining hall and opened the gates to be greeted by a table filled with dishes. Maids were even busier than usual, filling the table with all kinds of delicacies. Seated at the dining table were 2 people who had been waiting for him all this time. Eldrick looked up and laughed heartily as Orion stepped in. Ha ha ha, here comes our pride. You really lifted my old name to new heights with your display of talent. Celine softly chuckled and patted the seat beside her with a warm smile. Come here, dear. You've had a long day, haven't you? He exhaled a breath and walked over with a gentle smile. It was quite fulfilling. So, Celine said, pouring him a cup of warm tea, tell us. How was your first day at the academy? Orion took a sip, savoring the fragrant liquid before setting it down. Eventful. The entrance ceremony was probably the most interesting part. They announced the top 10 students who performed the best in the entrance test. Celine's eyes flashed with pride. So, how does it feel being number 1 among all the students enrolling? Haha, he is my grandson. Of course he'll be first, Eldrick laughed and interrupted her. Sir, the ovalfire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Quiet, you. I'm talking to my grandson. Celine huffed and turned back to Orion. He chuckled and nodded. It feels quite good. I also got a few rewards for getting first place. Oh? What did you get? Eldrick asked curiously. Orion stretched his words, purposely creating tension. Seeing both of them looking at him eagerly, he smiled and said, a voucher for a rank 9 armament, access to the 3rd floor of the Arcanium, and I can take 3 spell books from within. And a special privilege of entering the Origin Mana Pool. Eldrick raised an eyebrow. Origin Mana Pool? That little lass actually took out something like that for you? Probably Reynold was also involved in this. Celine patted his head softly. This is a great opportunity for you, dear. Make sure you are fully prepared for it. Orion nodded his head with a smile. Yes. For now, I want to focus on forming my rune. Otherwise, I feel like it would be a wasted opportunity if I head there early. Eldrick thoughtfully nodded his head. That is correct. It's best to use it after forming an affinity rune. Another interesting thing was the first lecture, Orion added, changing the topic. Oh? Eldrick raised an eyebrow, eating a slice of roast meat. What was it about? Vice Dean Hargan himself gave it. He taught us about the elemental classification system, the process of affinity rune formation, and introduced us to the Runic language. Celine's brows lifted slightly. Hargan? I hadn't expected him to teach the first years directly. Orion nodded slightly. I think it was only for one lecture. But he made quite an impression. Broke quite a few egos and announced a deadline, 1 month to learn the Runic language and form our affinity rune. Or we get expelled. Eldrick choked briefly on his wine. Pfft, what? 1 month? Orion smirked. Yep. It will be quite fun. Celine chuckled softly, though her gaze grew serious. That's quite the challenge. They're pushing this generation hard. Looks like they're training them for this golden era. Orion's eyes briefly flickered with thought. Golden era, huh? Maybe unexpected surprises await both me and the teachers. He shook his head and leaned back. Whatever it is, he said quietly, I'll be ready. That's the spirit, Master. And don't worry, I'll keep track of your rune progress quest for you. Eldrick and Celine proudly looked at Orion, feeling good about his maturing mindset. The trio continued to chat and laugh as he shared the incident about the young master before telling them about his practice today. He turned his face toward Celine. Ah, Grandma, I wanted you to forge a weapon for me. Celine's eyes brightened the moment Orion mentioned the word weapon. The soft clink of porcelain against wood echoed as she set her teacup down, her expression shifting from grandmotherly warmth to the focused gaze of a seasoned runesmith. Oh, she said with interest, folding her hands on the table and leaning slightly forward. What kind of sword are you thinking of, dear? Orion wiped his lips with a cloth napkin and set it aside, sitting up straighter. I've been training with the basic longsword Uncle Edgar gave me, but after today's events and my evening practice, it felt off. Too light. I need something heavier, a heavy longsword with a good amount of weight. But not big like a greatsword so it won't restrict my movements. Celine nodded slowly, her eyes flashing with understanding. So you want a hybrid of sorts? A longsword with density. One that doesn't slow you down but still hits like a beast when needed. Exactly. Orion's eyes lit up. Uncle Edgar said I'd need a dense alloy, something stronger than the common metal they use. Things like bone steel, wind silver, or mithril composites maybe? But it also needs runes, internal weight control, shock absorption, mana conduction. He trailed off, looking at her almost sheepishly. Is it possible? Celine chuckled and reached out to gently pat his hand. Possible? My sweet boy, I've made spirit blades that can cut through mountains and runic hammers that can pulverize even enchanted stone above 9th grade. Your request is a treat in comparison. Eldrick chuckled beside her. You've got her fired up now, boy. We won't see her outside the forge for a week. She playfully swatted at Eldrick without looking away from Orion. It will require a proper forging chamber and some high-quality materials. Bone steel will do for the core structure, it's naturally dense and channels mana well. I'll reinforce the inner matrix with a sliver of wind silver to improve conductivity. As for the runes, I'll need to carve them myself, weight balancing, kinetic transfer arrays, a control seal tied to your mana signature, and a few little surprises. Orion blinked. You're going to do all that? She smiled, radiant and proud. Of course. You're my grandson. You don't need to worry about materials or time. Just leave it to me. But don't you need? No, she said, cutting him off gently. Don't think about it. Just keep training. I'll have your sword ready before your test's time is up. Orion's heart swelled at her confidence. Hee Grandma OP. You're basically getting a custom weapon for free, Master. Greater than over equal to nabla less than over equal to, /. Chapter 111, Anger? And it will be much better than whatever I get from Gacha at my current level due to compatibility issues, he mused with a soft grin. Then I'll leave it to you, he said with a soft smile. The three of them continued to chat and eat until Orion finished his food and bid them farewell, with Rune and Fiora following him out. Looking at his fading back, Eldrick turned his gaze towards Celine. Are you going to forge him a weapon above 9th grade? Celine chuckled and shook her head. Of course not. In fact, I was thinking of forging his sword to be around tier 6 or tier 7. Oh? Eldrick raised an eyebrow. Since when did this doting woman become so stingy? Celine gave him a side glance. Don't think I'm being stingy. A tier 7 sword will be useful for him until he reaches at least tier 6. By then, he should have also learned about runesmithing. Realization dawned on Eldrick as he clapped his hands. Ah, so that's what you were planning. True, it's always better to forge your own weapon yourself rather than rely on others. Celine nodded at his words, finally getting him to understand what she meant. So, what kind of sword will it be? Just a heavier longsword? Or will you put some special runes in it? He asked curiously. He had tried to learn runesmithing from her before, but he quickly realized he had no interest in it and gave up. Celine proudly raised her head. Of course there will be more than just a heavier sword. You just wait and see. Search *the Nelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Orion walked leisurely down the hall, the soft pad of his slippers muted against the warm wooden floor of the east wing. The mana lanterns glowed faintly along the walls, casting tranquil golden light over polished stone and shadowed corners. Trailing behind him were Rina and Fiora, walking at a similar pace with relaxed steps. Rina hummed softly under her breath, while Fiora clasped her hands behind her back, her eyes watching Orion with that familiar fond light. Rina, Fiora, Orion said, slowing slightly as they neared the corridor junction, you can head off now. I'm going to visit Seraph before bed. Fiora blinked and tilted her head. This late, master? Rina smirked playfully, raising her eyebrow. Oh ho? Visiting her at night now? Should I prepare scented oils for your grand seduction? Orion shook his head with a chuckle and flicked his fingers. With a soft poof, a small tightly wrapped bundle of elven porridge appeared in his palm. I'm bringing her dinner, not whatever you're thinking. She only eats moonberries all the time. I figured a change would be nice. Both girls paused. Right, Rina said after a moment, though her grin hadn't dimmed. So thoughtful and caring for your maids. You're practically husband material already. Orion softly flicked her forehead and said, go, before turning away. Ow, Rina quickly placed her hands on her head. Fiora covered her smile and gave a soft bow. Good night, master. Night, he replied, waving a hand lazily as he walked alone down the hallway toward Seraph's room. Soon, he stopped in front of a wooden door and softly knocked on it twice. It's me, Seraph. As usual, he waited for a reply but received none. Exhaling a breath, he opened the door. The door creaked open with a faint push, revealing the dimly lit room within. A soft night lamp glowed in the corner, and the moonlight poured through the window. The bed was neatly tucked, and sitting near the edge was an empty plate, once filled with moonberries. Orion stepped inside quietly and picked up the plate, placing it gently on the bedside table. Across the room, Seraph sat by the window, half hidden behind the flowing curtains, her legs tucked beneath her and green hair cascading down her back like a green landscape itself. She slowly turned as he approached and looked at him closely, yet didn't speak a single word as usual. Orion smiled and reached for a chair before setting the bundle on a nearby tray. It's been a long day today. Classes, small skirmishes, trading, training, and yes, dinner. She continued to listen without a word of reply. After speaking for a while, he pointed toward the bundle. Elven porridge, he explained. From my academy. An elven woman was selling this in the cafeteria there. Thought you'd be bored of berries by now. Seraph's eyes flashed with something, either painful memories or nostalgia of eating the porridge back at home. Orion clearly caught her reaction and pushed the box slightly forward. Figured you'd like something else other than moonberries from your homeland as well. She continued to stare down at the bundle with an inexplicable gaze. Orion thoughtfully looked at her and stood up. I guess I'll visit to chat more tomorrow. It's quite late and I should head to sleep now as well. She slowly raised her head and looked at him with a much different gaze than before. He didn't say any words and left the room. Why did you leave so soon, Master? I thought you would chat more with her today. Orion shook his head while walking toward his room at the side. I can't overstep her boundaries right now. You could clearly tell that porridge had a massive impact on her. It's better to let her process her thoughts in peace rather than be a distraction. Reaching for his door, he softly pushed it open and entered inside before gently closing it behind him. The soft mantle lamps flickered to life the moment his foot crossed the threshold, casting a calming amber hue over the chamber. He didn't bother changing clothes, he was already in comfortable nightwear, courtesy of Rina and Fiora, and his limbs were heavier than usual from the day's relentless activity. With a slow breath, he walked across the room and collapsed onto the large bed, sinking into the familiar comfort of the silk sheets and feather-stuffed mattress. The ceiling above glimmered faintly with runes meant to ease rest. He didn't activate them. His mind wasn't ready to sleep just yet. He lay on his back, eyes tracing the wooden carvings on the ceiling. The day's events rolled through his thoughts like a tide. He'd gone from not even a student to the top-ranked student of the most prestigious academy of the kingdom, fought a duel, attended a major class, traded treasure, trained with Edgar, had dinner with Celine and Eldric, and visited Seraph, all in one day. No wonder my soul feels heavier than my body, he mused dryly. Because your schedule is far too packed. You aren't used to this level of workload all at once. Even dragons take naps, you know. Eyes closed face. Orion let out a soft chuckle. You're finally saying something useful. There was a pause, then Lumi's voice returned, more subdued than usual. But you did well today. Especially during that duel. Though, I've been meaning to ask. Yeah, Orion said, eyes narrowing slightly as he stared up. I wanted to talk about that too. When I activated Dragon Instinct, something felt off. Too intense. Like I was far angrier than usual. That's because you were. Orion turned his head on the pillow. Elaborate. Chapter 112, Expanding Inventory or Gambling? Lumi didn't immediately answer. Her tone, when it came, was thoughtful. More serious than usual. It's your lineage. More specifically, both your Fire Dragon and Thunder Dragon bloodlines are true Emperor grade. You've inherited traits directly from them, including their emotional cores. True dragons are not gentle beings, Master. Especially Fire and Thunder dragons, two of the most destructive dragons out there. Orion frowned. So, you're saying they're inherently quick to rage? No, not just rage, destruction. Their nature itself is destructive. Their instincts are built on dominance. When you activated Dragon Instinct, you didn't just get faster reaction speed. You also amplified your emotions many times more. That explained a lot. He hadn't been angry before activating the Dragon Instinct. But the moment he activated it, the mere thought of being challenged by a worthless trash like Aaron seemed far too offensive to him. Orion exhaled slowly. Is there any way to control it? Of course. That's what training is for. You don't have full control of your dragon instincts due to your young age. You are still only a hatchling among dragons, after all. After your second evolution, maybe it will get better. Maybe? He asked speechlessly. I'm not sure since you are a special case, Master. Most true dragons can't fully control their instincts until they are young adults. He shut his eyes, letting the silence return for a moment. But hey, on the plus side, you looked really cool when you smacked that guy's shoulder into pieces. Asterisk greater than over equal to less than over equal to. Orion smirked. Yeah, well, let's try to master Dragon Instinct sooner so I won't end up killing someone accidentally. Good, that's the way to think for moving forward. He shook his head with a chuckle, then shifted under the blanket. Anyway. Let's talk about something practical now. I got 1070 high-grade mana crystals today from selling those artifacts. Can I use them to upgrade my inventory? Absolutely. You have 7 system points right now, and you need 900 to expand the inventory from 10 to 100 slots. Orion blinked. So I should have enough, right? Oh, I need to convert mana crystals into system points first. Yep. I can do it for you. Just say the word. How much do I get from high-grade crystals? Standard exchange rate is 1 high-grade mana crystal equals 1 system point. So for 1070 crystals, you'll get 1100 SP. Did you fail your math exam? Eyes closed face. It's due to the uneven distribution of mana among them, some have higher, some lower. The system transforms the mana inside the crystals, not the number of them. Ah, I forgot about that. Been a while since I exchanged mana crystals for SP. So, do you want to upgrade the inventory, or go gambling? He speechlessly looked at the system screen, seeing her so excited about it. You just want me to suffer. Are you trying to make me sink deeper and deeper into gambling addiction? Cough, nothing like that, master. I just thought you might get something better from gambling than inventory expansion. Like maybe an inner world seed which you can grow in your body? Then you can store all the things in the world you want. Orion, listening to her words, felt a flicker of temptation rise, but he hurriedly shook his head, brushing it off like a bad idea. I have more chances of stumbling across a divine sword in this world than getting an inner world seed from Gotcha. Lumi's voice piped up again, tone mischievous and full of barely restrained excitement. So should I expand the inventory? Or? He sighed, rubbing his temple. Just expand the inventory. She giggled softly, her tone laced with teasing charm. Are you sure, master? Maybe not an inner world seed, but like, something to make you grow stronger in a short while? His brows twitched. Expand the inventory. Are you sure? She asked again, this time with a mock-innocent tone. Orion raised his hand as if to throttle someone through the air and muttered through a tired sigh, yes. Should I lock in your choice? Lumi pressed on sweetly. He stared at the system screen, expression deadpan. A long pause passed. Yes. You sure you won't regret it? She added with the tone of a devil whispering on his shoulder. Orion let out an audible groan, collapsing back into the bed as he pulled the blanket over his face. Fucking hell, just expand it, you damn gambling addict. Ding. 900 SP consumed to expand the inventory. Inventory, 10-100. Damaged World Tree Seed, Supreme Grade. Strange Stone, Unknown Grade. Minus 600 tons of meat, Common Grade. Bonesteel Sword, High Grade Treasure / Tier 9. Moonberry X9 975, Common Grade. Thunderstrike Bow, Common Grade / Tier 8. Emberstone Staff, Common Grade / Tier 9. Spatial Blink Rune, Uncommon Grade. -3 Lives Morning Dew, Uncommon Grade. Convergence Sigil, Legendary Grade. Finally. Orion removed the blanket and looked at the screen. Show me all of my treasures in the spatial ring. Ding. She showed a long list of items in front of him, neatly arranged under different categories: weapons, accessories, utility items, and special treasures. He looked at it for some time. Alright, then put the treasures in my inventory: Stone Poison Blade, Windsteel Blade, Thunderwood Armor, Shadowveil Band, Wind's Hard Pendant, Nightshade Ring, Solar Flare Pendant, Bracelet of Minor Fortitude. Oh damn, I forgot I bought this, should have used it during training. You can't utilize mana armaments before forming a rune, master. I see. Well anyway, continue with putting in Runestone Hammer, Crystal Watch Compass, Binding Chains of Elgar, Echoing Horn of Rally, Beastbone Arrow Set, Thundersteel Shard, Runic Mana Stone, Beast Lore Flute, Herd Collection, Elixir of Mental Clarity, Emberflame Grimoire, Fire Apprentice Spellbook, Azure Ice Rune Scroll, abyssal shadow stone. Done, master. All the treasures are now in your inventory. Sort them out as they were sorted in my storage ring. Done. Wow, aren't you quite efficient today? Lumi chuckled and cheekily said. I'm just built different. Sure, sure. Now show me the inventory. He lazily said. Ding. Inventory, 28 out of 100 slots used. Inventory expanded. System autosort enabled. Sir the Nellfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Categories, weapons, accessories, utility, special, consumables. Weapons. Bonesteel sword, common grade treasure / tier 9. Thunderstrike bow, common grade / tier 8. Emberstone staff, common grade / tier 9. Stone poison blade, common grade / tier 6. Windsteel blade, common grade / tier 5. Accessories. Thunderwood armor, common grade / tier 9. Shadowveil band, uncommon grade. Windsheart pendant, common grade / tier 5. Nightshade ring, common grade / tier 8. Solar flare pendant, common grade / tier 8. Bracelet of minor fortitude, common grade / tier 3. Utility items. Runestone hammer, common grade / tier 7, runesmithing tool. Crystal watch compass, common grade / tier 8, navigation. Binding chains of Elgar, common grade / tier 6, restrained artifact. Echoing horn of Raleigh, common grade / tier 4, support tool. Beastbone arrow set, X100, common grade / tier 3. Runic mana stone, common grade / tier 7, runic item. Beast lore flute, common grade / tier 5, beast control. Herd collection, common grade / tier 3. Thundersteel shard, common grade / tier 6, material. Abyssal shadow stone, common grade. Special treasures. Damaged world tree seed, supreme grade. Strange stone, unknown grade. Convergence sigil, legendary grade. Consumables. Moonberry X9 950, common grade, elven food. -3 lives morning dew, uncommon grade, rare elixir. Elixir of mental clarity, common grade / tier 8, focus boost. Emberflame grimoire, uncommon grade, fire spells. Fire apprentice spellbook, common grade / tier 3, fire basics. Azure ice rune scroll, common grade / tier 9, ice spell scroll. Spatial blink rune, uncommon grade, one-time use blink rune. See? Look how clean and neat your inventory is now. Even people with OCD will approve of this one. Greater than over equal to 4 all less than over equal to. Chapter 113, Grandma missing? You placed the spell books and consumables, but the items aren't organized in ascending or descending order. OCD people would chew you out, heh. You'll keep getting new treasures. How long will I keep changing the list? Orion inwardly chuckled. I guess that's true. Just put the spell books in the special treasures category. Done. Finally, this place looks better. Orion looked at the inventory again with a smile. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you're happier than I about this whole upgrade. Hee well, I do live in your sea of consciousness. A tidy inventory is good for my mental health, too. I mean, have you seen how you just dumped things in random piles before this in the storage ring? Degree. I thought you liked to live in messy places, he playfully asked. No, what the foo, who would like being buried under 600 tons of meat and 10,000 moonberries? I'm an assistant, not a butcher. Fine, you win. Orion chuckled and conceded. Oh, write that down. Master said I was right, once again this month. And probably the last time you'll be right this month, he inwardly mumbled, finally rolling onto his side and pulling the blanket over himself. Nope, I'm always right. You just don't want to admit it. She dramatically exhaled a sigh, as if disappointed. Night, master. Don't dream of weird stuff. Eyes closed face. Bah, just go away. Let me sleep in peace. Finally, alone in the quiet night, his mind began to drift. His thoughts wandered, from Seraph's reaction to the porridge, to Celine's promise to forge his sword, to the origin mana pool and the rune formation waiting ahead. There was still so much to do. But for now, he decided to just sleep. Morning sun began rising with a firm knock 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 at his door. Young master, the sun's up. Rena's sweet voice chimed through the door. And so is be breakfast, Fiora's gentle voice followed, sounding just a touch more energetic than usual. Orion groaned, eyes fluttering open. He blinked at the golden light spilling in through the window slats. Wakey wakey, sleepy dragon. I don't feel like waking up, these blankets have curse magic in them. He inwardly groaned and turned around in the bed. Lumi's playful voice sounded in his mind. You'll be late for classes today if you don't wake up. Ugh, why did I have to enter this shitty routine again? Last life was enough, he muttered, pushing off the blanket and heading for the washroom. A few minutes later, the door creaked open. Rena stepped in. Time for a bath, master. You have a long day ahead. Yeah. He sighed. Fiora followed quietly with a folded set of fresh clothes in her arms. We already prepared the water, master. Dragged like a noble prisoner, Orion allowed the two to guide him into the bathing chamber once again, his mind still slowly waking up from sleep. But as warm water hit his skin, as hands gently scrubbed the aches from his back and shoulders, a small smile returned to his face. The scent of fresh herbs and steam clung to Orion's skin as he stepped out of the bath, now fully awake and much less grumpy. His raven hair was damp, falling behind his back, and his white tunic clung lightly to his frame as Rena looked at his messy hair. Your sleepy hair is all over the place, master. Even bathing didn't help it, she muttered, dragging her fingers through his damp locks with wonder at how soft they felt to the touch. I just woke up, he said, yawning and walking lazily toward the dressing table before sitting down at a stool. Beside him, Fiora adjusted the strap on her simple-made sash and smiled faintly. You look fine, master. A little sleepy, maybe. More like a noble panda with bedhead. Lumi's voice snickered in his mind. Orion ignored her and let Rena and Fiora comb his hair and dress him. Soon, they tied his hair back, and he wore the academy uniform that he got yesterday. Now dressed in a white academy uniform with thunder lines embroidered at the sides, he looked like a proper academy student. The trio exited the room as they made their way through the softly glowing corridor. The morning sunlight filtered in through the tall windows, painting gold lines across the polished floor. cthnovelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. So, what do you think? How long will it take me to learn the Runic language? He asked casually. Well, Rena said, crossing her arms as she walked, you'll probably learn it soon. Me and Fiora took around a month to learn it. So maybe, in like a week? Orion rubbed his chin. You think so? Fiora giggled softly. Of course, you are much more talented than us. Haha, then I will try my best not to disappoint my dear maids, he chuckled to himself. I wonder, did Seraph eat the porridge? Why don't you go and visit her, master? Because I won't be able to spend much time. I'll visit her in the evening and bring more porridge. As they rounded the final corner, the familiar carved doors of the dining hall came into view. Despite the closed doors, he could already smell the aroma of roasted vegetables, meat, and buttery bread wafting out. Orion stepped closer, pushed open the gates, and blinked. Only one figure sat at the long wooden table. Morning, brat. Eldrick called, patiently waiting for Orion to arrive at the dining table. Finally decided to wake up? Morning, Grandpa. Orion strolled over and took his seat. Where's Grandma? Eldrick picked up a cup of warm tea and took a sip. Off to gather materials. Said she needed some rare metals for your sword. She'll be back in a few days. So serious already? Orion said, looking a little surprised. That's faster than I expected. Don't underestimate your grandma, Eldrick said, chuckling. Once she starts a project, she doesn't stop. She could probably forge a weapon in her sleep if she wanted to. Orion grinned and picked up a slice of buttered toast. I'll make sure not to let it go to waste then. They ate the food while laughing and chatting as Eldrick shared a few insights about the politics of the kingdom. The brat that fought you yesterday. I had Edgar look into it and found out he was from a count house, he said seriously after putting down his fork. Orion raised an eyebrow. Are the counts of this kingdom so courageous? Eldrick chuckled and shook his head. Of course not. They don't have the guts to target a house that stood on the same level as a duke. That's why you should be more cautious. A higher-ranked noble house must be after you. Orion lowered his head as his expression turned thoughtful. Well, I already expected this. Nothing much I can do except face it as the challenges come. In the end, he just decided to take care of it once the problem arose. Eldrick nodded his head. He didn't want to clear all of Orion's obstacles, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to grow properly. Well, I'll just keep an eye on the higher-ups of that Marquis house. They continued to eat in silence for a while as the estate began to wake up, maids tending to the garden, birds chirping across the walls, faint neighs from the stables. Chapter 114, Dantalion. Once he'd cleared most of his plate and downed the last of his tea, Orion stood up and stretched. All right. Time to head out. Eldrick nodded and waved a hand. Learn the Runic language sooner. You have a lot more work to do than your classmates. Orion smilingly shook his head and waved his hand while walking out, making his way to the front courtyard as Rune and Fiora left to do their own things. He soon reached the exit as the entrance came into view. There, the sleek black carriage stood ready, its elegant design looking as good as usual. Lucan stood by the driver's seat, tossing a small pebble into the air as if bored out of his mind. He caught it between two fingers and looked up as Orion approached. Well, look who's up bright and shining like a prince, Lucan grinned and bowed. Good morning, young master. Good morning. Orion stepped up. Where's Uncle Edgar? Lucan scratched his neck and shrugged. He's got some business today. He left early in the morning. Said he'd catch up with you later. I see. Orion glanced once at the estate behind him, then stepped into the carriage. Let's go. With pleasure, Lucan said, climbing into the driver's seat with an overly dramatic flourish. Thunder Peak Royal Academy, here we come. The carriage began rolling down the street with only Lucan and Orion inside, heading toward the academy as Orion gazed outside, wondering about the Runic language. Far from the vibrant lands of Zarathal, where sunlight still held meaning and civilization thrived in glory, Nitherion brooded beneath a sky forever shrouded in roiling clouds of soot and shadow. The continent was still a maelstrom of ruin, a scorched, mutilated land where chaos reigned supreme and sanity was an illusion. The air was thick with sulfur and screams. From the charred peaks of obsidian mountains to the gaping fissures in the ash-streaked plains, death was not an event, it was the norm, happening each second. Demons of every form and madness crawled this blood-drenched land. Some walked with twisted limbs, others swam across molten rivers, their bodies shaped by agony and a lust for power. The skies were never clear, winged abominations battled in midair, and lightning storms surged unnaturally, drawn by the bloodshed below. At the very heart of this hellscape stood a towering obsidian fortress, the Citadel of Viper. A monument to dread, it rose like a black dagger stabbing the light. Spires curved like claws into the sky, and infernal gargoyles lined the walls, each one weeping molten tears as if in eternal torment. CTH Novel, F. IR.NT website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Inside the fortress, the throne room was bathed in dim crimson light. Lava flowed beneath the transparent glass floor in slow, bubbling rivers. Massive banners made from the hides of humans, elves, beast-kin, and other enemy lords hung above, swaying gently with the thick, unnatural wind. Deeper reclined upon her jagged throne, one leg crossed elegantly over the other. Her long, shadowy hair shimmered like oil in the flickering light. Her crimson eyes stared ahead, unblinking and sharp, like those of a predator who hadn't eaten in centuries. A ripple spread through the shadows before her. And then, it appeared. A figure, impossible to fully perceive, emerged from the darkness itself. Cloaked in pure shadow, his form was indistinct, more silhouette than substance. Eyes, if he had any, were hidden, and his presence felt like falling into a bottomless pit. Deeper, the figure spoke, his voice a distorted whisper that seemed to crawl inside one's ears. "You summoned me." Deeper's lips curled faintly. "You took your time, Dantalion." Dantalion, the 71st demon of Solomon, the king of manipulation and lies, gave no reply. He simply waited. "I've verified from my dogs what I sensed before," Deeper began, her voice filled with demonic charm that would make even the dead rise. There was a pulse, a ripple of something. Subtle, but unmistakable. It originated from the royal clan of the Titan race. A ripple? Dantalion's form tilted, as though intrigued. "The Titans have grown quiet in recent years. I thought they were bound by oaths and stagnated." "So did I," Deeper murmured, her claws tapping against the throne's armrest. "But this ripple was unnatural. I felt it from the Zarathal continent. And my underlings confirmed something amiss with the royal clan of Titans." Dantalion was silent for a moment. Then he slowly spoke, "You are not the only one to feel it. In the Thunderpeak kingdom of the human race, another anomaly has surfaced." Deeper's gaze sharpened. "Another?" "Yes. It was masked as soon as it surfaced. But I felt it the moment it appeared. The child is still growing up, learning about mana." The throne room fell into silence, the only sound the low, bubbling hiss of lava beneath them. "Two anomalies," Deeper finally said. "One among the Titans. One among the humans. Could one of them be the scion of the end?" Dantalion whispered. Deeper's jaw clenched. The name carried weight. Terror. And an unimaginable destiny. "He is meant to bring disaster," Dantalion continued, his form flickering. "Neither demons nor gods will survive his rise." "And if the forces of light discover this?" Deeper asked, eyes narrowing. "Then we will have war before we are ready." Dantalion's tone was cold, emotionless. "That is why he must die. Quietly. Before anyone realizes what he is." Deeper leaned forward, resting her chin on a clawed finger as she looked at Dantalion with amusement. "Why don't you attack the one in the human kingdom?" Dantalion's figure flickered. "I can't. Otherwise, we won't have a second chance. And it is troublesome. If I can't kill him in one hit, then his guardian will arrive to buy him time." Deeper's eyes flashed with surprise. "Oh? His guardian is strong enough to contend with you?" "No, but there is one being among the humans whom I can't contend against." His words hung low, making the atmosphere of the entire throne room heavy. Deeper's body shivered, her eyes flashing with a hint of fear. "Dawn. Dawn. Damn Dawn, how in the holy hell did this prime world birth such a monster?" She gritted her teeth, remembering the last time she had fought with him. Dantalion's figure darkened, sharing a similar worry. "He is the biggest anomaly of this world. Yet he is not on the same level as the anomaly we are about to face. Dawn is an incomprehensible being. We better be careful around him." Deeper took a deep breath. "Even the beings in the higher Kiliacosm aren't as monstrous as him." Dantalion's figure flickered, on the verge of extinguishment. "That's why, if I try and fail, the entire forces of light will wage war on us, and we'll lose all chances of killing the scion of the end." A suffocating silence followed. And then, like smoke scattering in the wind, Dantalion's form began to dissolve. His final words echoed softly through the room. "Find the scion. And end him." He vanished into the shadows, leaving only a lingering chill. Deeper remained motionless on her throne, her eyes fixed on nothing and everything. "Two anomalies," she whispered. but only one shall bring ruin. Her fingers clenched the armrests. Her voice, at first a murmur, grew jagged with venom. And Dawn, you should be. Her pupils dilated. Eternally damned. Boom. Her shrill scream ruptured the heavens. Half the citadel collapsed in a maelstrom of shrieking magic. Shockwaves tore across the sea and sky, turning entire regions into storms of death. The wails of millions rose, then fell silent. Chapter 115, Alarm Clock? Back in the vibrant Zarathal continent, deep inside the Thunder Peak Kingdom, a sleek, luxurious obsidian carriage could be seen rolling down the streets of the Second Ring. Inside the carriage, Orion sat comfortably with his arms crossed, head leaning slightly against the window as he watched buildings and noble estates blur past. He was still thinking about yesterday's lecture, the Runic language, and the test that Hargan had given everyone. A chuckle broke his thoughts when Lucan, still fiddling with a pebble in one hand, leaned back slightly from the driver's seat and tilted his head toward the carriage window. "So, found any beauties in the academy yet, young master?" Lucan asked with a grin that could rival a bard's wink. Orion chuckled. "That's your first question of the day?" "Of course," Lucan said, eyes twinkling with mischief. "That's the most important part of academy life, no? The books and training are temporary. The memories of pretty faces, eternal." Orion shook his head, though a small smile lingered on his lips. "There are a few interesting ones." "Oh ho? Do tell." One is a noble girl. Clever, smug, and pretty smart as well," Orion said, thinking of Arya's smirks and smiling face. "Sounds quite interesting," Lucan muttered. "Should suit your taste. And then there's another one, quieter, or rather mute. Keeps her thoughts close. And she likes to keep a spear with her at all times." His voice turned amused as he thought of Amelia. Lucan's grin widened. "You're already describing them so thoughtfully." Orion rolled his eyes. "Don't worry, I'm still focused on my primary goal. I'm not falling for anyone just yet." "Yet," Lucan repeated with a knowing laugh. The rest of the ride passed in light chatter as he told him about the others until finally, the carriage pulled into the academy's stone-paved path. Other students were arriving too, some by foot, others in simple carriages, and a few by grand magical carriages lined with shimmering house sigils. Sir the novelfire.net ** website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. "Here we are," Lucan said, hopping down and opening the door for him. Orion stepped out, adjusting the collar of his uniform and fishing out his student badge. As he walked toward the grand gates, one of the staff stationed at the side scanned the badge, nodding curtly. The gate scanned him yet again as he passed through. Once inside, he began strolling around the academy, visiting the cafeteria again before looking around the arena. The sun had slowly risen as the golden rays cast a soft glow on the buildings inside. After walking for a few more minutes, he paused to admire the view from the bridge over a small mana-filled spring. Just then, he heard a familiar voice. "Well, look who's out early for once," Arya called, appearing from a nearby path with Amelia walking beside her. "Haha, what can I say? I have a nice alarm clock." Orion laughed while turning around as he saw them joining him. "Moo. I'm not an alarm clock." Potato, he inwardly smirked and replied. "Oh? What's that alarm clock? Where can I buy one?" Arya's eyes lit up as she asked. Orion mischievously said, "Well, I'll sell you the alarm clock if she is disobedient." "That's it. I'm throwing hands." Orion nearly laughed out loud and ignored her, while Arya looked at him in confusion. "How can a clock be disobedient?" "Haha, nothing. I was just kidding. Good morning to both of you." Orion laughed and shook his head. Arya beautifully smiled like flowers blooming. "Good morning." Amelia glanced at him and nodded her head in greeting. She was still her usual self, holding her spear while looking at everything cautiously. "Girl, until when are you going to keep this cold face?" You do know you'll be coming to this academy for the next few years. I won't if I can become strong enough during that time frame. There's no strict hierarchy between years. Sigh, you gotta take initiative sometimes. During perilous times, the most dangerous people can be the best choice. They can at least guarantee their survival. What if I choose the wrong person then? Well, everyone has their own luck, ha 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 ha. You crazy old woman. She saw both of them walking forward and hurried to catch up. As they walked toward the main building, Arya brought up the topic. So, have you thought more about that club? Yeah, Orion said, rubbing his chin. I'm still considering what to name it. Maybe something simple, something that won't attract the damn noble's attention. That won't last long, Arya said, glancing at him sideways. Knowing you, low profile won't work for you. But anyway, have you decided the purpose of the club? Emilia also looked at him, wondering what he would decide to do. Orion got silent, looking at the looming main building ahead. You know, my goal since the day I awakened was to explore this world. To find out what this vast world has to offer. The two of them continued to silently listen. I want to explore the legacy trials, forbidden zones, lost ruins, and even just some remote villages. I want to live a mundane life as well as an imperial life. And what could be better than having companions to share this journey with? He finally glanced at the two of them with a carefree smile. As if, even if the two of them decided to reject it, he would journey on his own. Emilia looked at him with admiration, as she felt her own blood boiling at the thought of exploring the hidden zones and old ruins. Yet Arya exhaled lightly. Are you sure you can do this? As a person grows in power, their responsibilities also grow similarly. Will you be able to do as you wish once you've grown enough? Orion paused and looked straight into her eyes. I'm not one to get restricted by moral chains. I will do as I wish. If I'm in the mood to explore, then I will explore. And if I'm in the mood to help my friends, then I will. Arya looked into his eyes, trying to gauge how much resolve he had to carry out his words. In the end, she exhaled a sigh and revealed a tired smile. Maybe you are right. Let's try to walk this path, for however long I can. Emilia looked at Arya's figure. She knew how much she had trained to inherit the kingdom. But the truth that no one knew was, she never wanted to inherit it. Yet, to not disappoint her parents, she did everything in her power to learn politics and train herself. Orion nodded his head and didn't comment as they headed for the class after entering the main building. The class should be starting soon, right? Arya nodded her head. Yes, it should be about to start. Let's see how long you take to learn those primary runes. Orion raised an eyebrow, having no idea what those primary runes were. But he didn't ask, as he would get the answer soon enough. Orion walked alongside Arya and Emilia, the low murmurs of the excited students reaching his ears as he heard them discussing the Runic language class. Chapter 116, Runic language. When they reached the classroom, Orion paused at the threshold, his eyes scanning the hall. It was a wide-style room with rows of tiered seats curving around a central platform. A grand, obsidian black board hovered at the front, gently shimmering with residual mana from previous spells. Soft, cushioned seats filled most rows, each equipped with a small desk inscribed with subtle runic marks, likely to assist in spellcasting demonstrations. The room was already buzzing with activity, filled nearly to capacity. However, as soon as Orion, Emilia, and Arya stepped foot inside, the buzzing quieted down. Hundreds of eyes trailed them as the trio entered the class. The hall was full with over 300 students this time. Clearly, some bored seniors had decided to visit. Search *the nelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Yet, conspicuously, the front row remained vacant, its 10 seats reserved exclusively for the Academy's top students. Looks like we've made quite the entrance, Arya whispered teasingly, nudging Orion's arm as they stepped inside. Orion chuckled softly, noting the curious glances and murmurs rippling through the room as they approached the reserved seats. Amelia followed quietly, her posture alert and poised as always, her eyes calmly assessing her surroundings. Taking their seats, Orion found himself beside NYSS once again. She glanced at him, her dark eyes briefly meeting his before she returned her gaze forward, maintaining her usual composed demeanor. The room quieted gradually as a tall, distinguished figure strode confidently through the main entrance. Unlike Hargan, this new instructor was younger, probably in his mid-30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes beneath short, neat hair. He wore simple but elegant robes embroidered with silver thread that shimmered subtly with a mana-infused glow. "Good morning, everyone," he began warmly, his voice resonant and engaging. "For those who don't know me yet, I'm Instructor Alden. I specialize in advanced runic theory and practical spellcraft. Today, we'll be diving deeper into the fundamentals of the runic language." Alden's gaze swept over the students, lingering appreciatively on the front row. "I see our top scholars are punctual, excellent. Let's begin with a question. Who can tell me what primary runes are?" Arya immediately raised her hand. Orion watched with amusement as her face lit up eagerly. "Yes, Miss Arya?" Alden gestured encouragingly. Arya spoke clearly, her voice confident and precise. Primary runes are foundational glyphs within the runic language, each embodying a basic concept or function, such as elements or actions, used as the building blocks to create composite runes for more complex spells. "Precisely," Alden said, pleased. "And how many primary runes are taught within our academy?" Another student from the second row answered quickly, "There are 108 primary runes officially recognized by Thunder Peak Royal Academy, sir." "Excellent," Alden smiled, clearly satisfied with the rapid responses. He then turned slightly more serious. "But remember, while we teach 108, there exist many more scattered throughout the world, known only to those brave or foolish enough to venture into hidden ruins or lost archives." A ripple of intrigue passed through the students at the mention of unknown runes. Orion felt a spark of excitement. His heart quickened slightly at the thought of uncovering runes that no one else knew, hidden treasures that could make for a fun trip. Beside him, NYSS showed only the faintest hint of amusement, wanting to try answering a question herself. Instructor Alden paced casually, his hands clasped behind his back, clearly at ease with his students. Now, understanding runes isn't merely about memorization. It's about resonance. Each mage naturally resonates with certain runes more strongly than others. This resonance defines your proficiency and specialization. Can anyone explain what I mean by resonance? A shy-looking boy raised his hand hesitantly. It's like, when a rune feels right. As if it's part of you, natural and easy to invoke? Alden nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. Well done, young man. The stronger your resonance, the more efficiently you'll wield that rune. Mastery, therefore, requires not only intellectual study but personal exploration and deep self-understanding. Arya glanced at Orion, subtly smirking as if to challenge him, whispering, "Ready for some deep self-exploration?" Orion chuckled softly, as if I'd shy away from it. Instructor Alden clapped his hands, regaining their attention. Today, we'll discuss how to identify your core resonance and strengthen your connection to these primary runes. Let's start with an example. Rune Ignite, often misunderstood as simply fire, but it is far more nuanced. Who can tell me the true nature of Ignite? NYSS surprisingly raised her hand immediately. Orion found himself leaning forward curiously, interested in what she had to say. Yes, Miss NYSS? Alden prompted. NYSS's voice was calm and clear, almost melodic. Ignite isn't solely about creating fire. It symbolizes the inception or spark of transformation. It's the rune of beginnings and change, essential for any spell involving shifts in states or energy. Perfectly put, Alden said approvingly, his eyes showing genuine respect. And thus, mastering Ignite goes beyond mere elemental control. It is mastery over the essence of change itself. Orion found himself fascinated by this concept. He glanced at his hand, imagining the spark of ignition, the very beginning of something powerful. Internally, Lumi hummed softly, sensing his interest. It seems someone is inspired. Orion smiled inwardly. How could I not be? This feels like something important. Something fundamental. Throughout the lecture, Alden continued to guide them through various runes, patiently answering student questions, no matter how basic or advanced. Orion listened carefully, soaking up the nuances and subtleties that Alden highlighted, noting how each student's resonance was subtly reflected in the questions they asked. Amelia remained silent, scribbling notes diligently, her eyes occasionally flicking toward Orion as if gauging his reactions. Arya, animated and inquisitive as always, engaged Alden actively, clearly enjoying the challenge. As the lecture drew to a close, Instructor Alden left them with a final, encouraging message. Remember, each rune you learn isn't merely a tool, but a mirror reflecting your true nature. Seek to understand yourself as deeply as you seek to master the runic language. Orion leaned back thoughtfully, his mind brimming with possibilities. His path forward was clearer now, though it felt more profound, more personal, than ever before. Beside him, Arya glanced over with a knowing smile. So, learned anything interesting? Orion met her gaze, his eyes flashing confidently. More than I expected. And it feels like the beginning of something big. Arya giggled softly. Well, that's good. You should take the rune book from the library and buy some supplies to learn the runes. Orion nodded his head. That's true. I guess I can't just try to learn the runes in my sea of consciousness. Arya almost burst out laughing. What? Haha, that's suicide. I know. Orion's lips twitched as he remembered his last experience. Well then, I'll buy some stuff to learn it from and get the book from the library. Good, Arya nodded her head. Instructor Alden will probably teach us about how to create affinity runes tomorrow, so you don't have to try your best to learn them just yet. Yes, sure. I'll try to see if I can learn any at all today. Master, the quest is still pending. It's been a few days, should I start issuing penalties from next time if you're too late? Is this your way of taking revenge? Chapter 117, Singing Song? He, no such thing, Master. I'm your cute and lovely assistant, after all. Intersection superset of asterisk. Shaking his head, he looked around to see the entire classroom gradually erupt into chatter again as everyone discussed what they had learned. Instructor Alden dismissed them with a wave and an encouraging smile as he left the classroom. Orion slowly stood, stretching his arms above his head, feeling his muscles relax after sitting for hours. He glanced toward NYSS, who had quietly risen and was already leaving, her long black hair flowing gracefully behind her like a shadow. He briefly considered calling out to her, but she disappeared too swiftly into the flowing stream of students. Arya rose energetically beside him, humming softly under her breath as she packed away her things, clearly pleased with today's class. Amelia stood up calmly and packed her things as she silently adjusted the strap that secured her spear to her back. Orion felt excited just thinking about starting rune creation after the lecture. Something about Instructor Alden's words had deeply resonated with him, a feeling both thrilling and comforting, like finding the missing piece to a puzzle he hadn't realized he'd been assembling. Seems you enjoyed today's lesson quite well, Arya teased, nudging him lightly with her elbow. Orion shrugged casually. Instructor Alden has a way with words. Makes things easier to understand. Makes runes feel alive. Amelia nodded in agreement. Even she hadn't learned about runes in such depth. Arya laughed lightly, her voice soft and pleasant. Exactly. Weisstein Hargen's good, but Instructor Alden's explanations stick better. Though, she added with a playful smirk, you better not slack with such a good teacher, Brother Orion. Lest you fail your test. Orion rolled his eyes. And here I thought you believed in my brilliance. Arya placed a delicate finger on her chin, pretending to think deeply. Your brilliance is undeniable, but I don't know about your laziness. Orion placed a hand over his heart dramatically, feigning offense. I'm hurt. Truly wounded. Amelia's lips twitched slightly, almost forming a rare smile as she watched the playful exchange. A soft chime resonated through the hall, signaling the end of their time in the classroom. Orion stood, placing his things inside his storage ring and joining the slow-moving river of students exiting the hall. As they emerged into the sunlit courtyard, Arya stopped, turning apologetically toward Orion. "I have to head back home today. Mother requested my presence for something important, or at least she called it important." Her tone turned lightly teasing. "You know how royalty is. Even tea drinking can become a political crisis." Orion chuckled, nodding sympathetically. "Sounds exhausting." Amelia glanced between them briefly, ready to leave with Arya so she could train back at home. Arya waved cheerfully, turning away with a slight smile on her face. "See you tomorrow, brother Orion. Don't slack off." "I'll consider it," Orion replied playfully, watching their retreating backs for a moment before turning toward the towering library building visible across the expansive academy grounds. As Orion walked alone, he thought back to what he had learned during class. Students hurried past, talking animatedly, some clutching books, others brandishing their weapons. "Feeling lonely, master? Want me to sing you a song? I promise my singing voice is legendary." Lumi teased, her voice playful in his mind. CTHNafire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Orion chuckled quietly, shaking his head slightly. "Legendary, you say? I'd rather preserve my eardrums, thanks." "Moo. Rude. I'll have you know my singing would charm even the gods and demons. Charm them to sleep, maybe." "You're too cruel today, master. Did Instructor Alden's lecture embolden you to bully your adorable system assistant?" "TT. I don't recall you ever being adorable." Gasp. "Just for that, I'll double the difficulty of your next quest. You'll regret this defiance." Orion laughed softly, ignoring Lumi's theatrical threats as he reached the grand steps leading into the library. The structure stood before him, looking ancient yet impeccably well-maintained, its white marble pillars entwined with softly glowing mana vines. Inside, soft ambient mana light illuminated endless rows of neatly stacked shelves. Approaching the front desk, Orion politely cleared his throat, catching the librarian's attention. The elderly woman peered up from a rune-inscribed ledger, her gray eyes sharp and intelligent. "Yes, student? How may I help you today?" "I'm looking for the Runic language book," Orion explained calmly. "Instructor Alden recommended I get one from here." The librarian nodded knowingly, quickly flipping through the ledger. "Every new student receives a Runic language guide free of charge, issued by the Academy." She withdrew a slim volume bound in leather etched with silver runes and handed it carefully to Orion. "Here you go." "Thank you," Orion said politely, his fingers brushing over the smooth leather cover, feeling the faint hum of mana imbued within the book itself. Seeing his polite attitude, the old lady nodded and added, "It has all the 108 primary runes that can be found within this kingdom. Most people take years to decades to master all of them. So don't be disappointed if you can't learn them quickly." "I will remember your kind words," he replied politely before stepping outside the library. "That was fast. I thought you would waste more time in there." "I thought so as well, but the librarian gave me the book directly," he said, holding the runic book in his hand. Putting the book inside his inventory, he headed toward the cafeteria. The busy atmosphere enveloped him warmly, the delicious aroma of freshly cooked meals wafting enticingly. Orion navigated swiftly to the small, cozy stall managed by the familiar elven woman, whose smile widened slightly upon recognizing him. "Back for more of the porridge, are you?" she asked knowingly. "It's addicting," Orion said with a calm smile. "I couldn't resist." "Pack another one for me." She laughed softly, packing another generous bowl for him. "Good appetite, young one." After paying her, Orion carried his meal outside, finding Lucan waiting casually by the carriage, tossing a pebble in his hand as usual. "Uncle Lucan," Orion began while walking, "do you only have that one stone to pass your time with?" Lucan caught the pebble midair and turned toward Orion. Haha, young master, a poor man like me needs to find entertainment in the most mundane of things. Orion chuckled lightly. Well, anyway, I need materials for practicing runes, paper, ink, and whatever else is needed. Lucan chuckled knowingly, taking out a small magical messaging crystal. Right away, young master. I'll inform one of the mansion guards to handle it. His fingers deftly activated the crystal, relaying Orion's instructions swiftly. Orion nodded, watching him get to work, then climbed into the carriage. Settling comfortably in the plush seat, he took out some moonberries to eat on the way. You really do enjoy eating the same thing repeatedly, don't you? A bit boring, no? Says the sentient system who can't eat at all. Hey. Food envy is beneath me. Sounds like denial. You're hopeless, master. Absolutely hopeless. Orion chuckled quietly, feeling content. The carriage began to move, gently rocking him as he watched the surrounding buildings pass by. I'm curious about that resonance instructor Alden mentioned, Orion thought quietly. Maybe I'll find something interesting while practicing those runes. Chapter 118, Rune Resonance, oh that? Haha, you won't have to worry about your resonance. He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by that? Did you forget what mana channels you have? Saying this, Lumi opened his status screen in front of him. Mana channels, 9 primal mana channels, universally adaptable conduits capable of channeling all known energy forms. Primal mana channels, I know this. So what do you mean? Master got dumber. Think about it. If you have mana channels that can channel all energy and are universally adaptable, then which runes will they resonate with? Orion looked at the details of his mana channels again, his expression turning thoughtful. So, they won't resonate with any runes, yet at the same time, they'll resonate with all the runes? Correct. Orion's expression turned slightly excited. Then, will I be able to form all the runes? And will their power be stronger than others on the same level? Lumi's voice turned playful. Of course you'll be able to form all the runes. However, your power won't necessarily be greater than others on the same level based solely on your mana channels. Their specialty is universal adaptability, not amplification. I see. Well, that's good too. I should be able to learn the Runic language even faster now. Orion nodded and peacefully closed his eyes to rest on the way back. Oh? Now you're motivated? I thought I'd have to issue you a quest again. That's not needed. You can't even issue a second quest right now. That, I can't. But you need to learn to be less stubborn. I call it cautious. Yes, master. Cautious like when you recklessly tried forming the darkness affinity rune and nearly fried yourself, despite me warning you? Hey, experience is the best teacher. Experience didn't just teach you, it nearly killed you. Yet here I am. Alive and wiser. Alive, sure. Wiser? Debatable. Orion rolled his eyes at her persistent teasing, settling deeper into his seat. Despite the playful banter, he felt a genuine warmth. Lumi's lively presence in his mind was oddly comforting, making him realize how much he'd grown accustomed to her constant chatter. As the carriage rolled quietly onward toward home, Orion stared thoughtfully out the window, his thoughts drifting toward the path ahead, runes, affinities, and all the mysteries he'd soon uncover. Yet, before all of this, his daily practice awaited him. Uncle Lucan, will Uncle Edgar be back home by now? He turned and looked toward the small window. Lucan turned around and awkwardly smiled. Young master, can you stop calling me uncle? I'm not nearly old enough to warrant such treatment. Orion smiled in amusement. Then what should I call you? He sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Anything is fine, really. Lackey, little one, Lucan, whatever you wish, young master. But uncle is too much. Orion's smile turned mischievous. All right, Grandpa Lucan. I'll do as you wish. Lucan's smile turned ugly. Why do you want me dead, young master? What have I even done to you? Sir, the novelier.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Orion laughed out loud. Alright, I'll stop kidding. I'll call you Brother Lucan then. Lucan's smile turned bright and smug. Ha ha ha, that's my young master, big-hearted and magnanimous. Tell me about Uncle Edgar now. Orion shook his head and asked. Ah yes, Sir Edgar, he nodded. He should be back by now. He didn't give the exact details, but he leaves from time to time. Orion nodded and went back to looking outside the window. Soon, the carriage arrived at the estate. Lucan stopped it outside the main building of the mansion as Orion descended. There, Edgar stood waiting at the door. Seeing Orion, he lightly bowed. Good afternoon, young master. Hope you had a good day. Nodding his head, Orion smiled. I had a nice day. How about your work? Are you done, or need more time? Edgar stood straight and scratched his head. Haha, my work is done. How can I not be finished before it's time for young master's training? Lucan jumped down from the front of the carriage. I'll have the things you asked for delivered to your room while you practice, young master. Orion hummed in acknowledgement. That's for the best. Let's go, Uncle Edgar. Let's increase the intensity today. Oh? Looks like your body is adapting quite nicely to this training regimen, Edgar said, pleased with Orion's progress. Orion rubbed the back of his neck and smiled. What can I say? I'm kind of a genius. Edgar let out a hearty laugh. That you are. With a chuckle, he swung the mansion gates open. Come on, let's begin your training. Orion's lips curled up as he followed him inside. While walking, Edgar softly asked, How was the academy? You came back earlier today. Glancing at the paintings on the walls as usual, Orion answered, I only attended a single lecture. I decided it wasn't worth attending the others before learning the Runic language. Edgar thoughtfully nodded. Then it would depend on how you use your time. Aren't I using it quite efficiently? He chuckled as they turned a few corners before reaching the doors of the training room. Edgar pushed the gates open while chuckling. Let's see how much you can learn today. Orion cracked his knuckles and went to pick up the wooden longsword. Well, I need to focus on my stance and movement technique. I'll practice my swings when I get the real sword. Edgar turned around and stood in front of him. Yes, that's a good idea. Otherwise, the weight of the new sword will mess up your flow if you're used to swinging such a light one. Nodding, Orion took a deep breath and held the sword in front of him, slowly pushing his left foot back and leaning slightly forward. Edgar, watching Orion train, felt proud as well as a bit nostalgic, but he didn't dwell on the thought before making Orion repeat the training they had done the day before. After that, he sparred with him while pointing out areas for improvement. Even he was astonished at the speed Orion was adapting and learning. A true monster, he inwardly muttered before striking Orion's hand and making him drop his sword. Excellent. You're doing truly well, young master, Edgar said, picking up the sword and handing it back to Orion. We're just getting started, uncle, Orion smiled in excitement before brandishing his sword again. Edgar kindly smiled and began training him once more. Orion planted his sword on the ground, panting. That was quite intense, he said, looking at Edgar, who hadn't even broken a sweat and stood casually ahead, his sheathed sword resting on his shoulder. You trained well today, young master, he said praisingly. Orion tiredly smiled and placed the sword back. Yes, it was a good session. I should head for a bath now. Edgar smiled and placed the sword back on his waist belt. Walking out of the grounds, Orion stretched his arms. I feel like I can call myself a swordsman in a few months. Others will take years to earn that title. You know, all those noble kids have been learning since they were like 5 to 8. Orion shook his head. It would be surprising if they could match a true dragon's power. And I'm not only a true dragon, but also the apex of what humans can be. Yet we still don't know which is actually better, your true dragon emperor lineage or your human emperor lineage. Chapter 119, True Dragon Lineage better, he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. True dragon lineage should be better, no? It gave me tier 7 affinity after all. But the human emperor lineage also gave you affinity to all elements. And there might be more things we haven't uncovered yet. Well, it's a thought for the future. For now, I need to learn other things. Shaking his head, he soon reached the familiar corridor of his room. At the front of his door stood his two lovely maids, patiently waiting for him while idly chatting. Hearing footsteps, their eyes lit up as they turned to the right to see Orion walking towards them, covered in sweat like yesterday. They quickly bowed in greeting. "Good evening, young master." "Good evening, ladies." Orion chuckled and greeted them back. Standing straight, Rune curiously looked at him. "You came back earlier today, master. Though still no less sweaty than yesterday." Sar the novelfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Orion shook his head at her words. "This is the medal of hard work. And I only attended a single class, so I came back early." Fiora shyly looked at him and motioned inside. "The bath is ready, young master." He stretched his body while entering his room. "Let's hurry to the bath. I have more work to do today." "Oh? Did you finally get homework, young master?" Rena playfully asked, picking up the clothes she had already readied. Orion's lips curled up in amusement. "Yes, apparently I will get homework in the academy as well." While laughing and chatting, he entered the bathroom with the two of them. That was a nice bath," Orion said, exhaling a sigh of comfort as he walked out of the bathhouse. Rena and Fiora followed after him, looking at his relaxed expression with soft smiles. There is still time for dinner, master," Fiora quietly informed him. Orion nodded his head. "Then I'll go and meet up with Seraph. I still have her food." Saying that, he paced out of the room while wondering about Seraph. Looking at her condition yesterday, she had been pretty out of it. Rena and Fiora looked at each other before heading off to do other work, while Orion came and knocked on the room beside his. "Knock knock." "Seraph, it's me," he said, waiting for a few seconds before pushing open the gates. Looking inside, he saw her sitting at the window, with an empty bowl of porridge placed on a table a bit further away from her. Oh? At least she placed the bowl at the other table after eating. He inwardly nodded before walking in front of her. Dragging a chair from the side, he sat down in front of her. "How are you doing now? Did you like the porridge?" As usual, she didn't reply but turned around to stare at him. However, this time, her eyes held a bit more life than usual. Orion smiled, noticing the visible improvement, and continued talking with her, sharing today's events as well as telling her about his training. After talking with her for a while, he took out a bowl of porridge and a plate of moonberries from his inventory and placed them on the table. "All right, that's enough from me. Eat the porridge before it gets cold." Saying that, he stood up. Seraph, looking at the food at the table, nodded her head. Orion's eyes lit up with pleasant surprise. Without further ado, he left. Good, good. I'm getting more reactions out of her. At this rate, I might really be able to melt her in some time. He, master's charm is through the roof. Greater than over equal to 4 all less than over equal to. Orion smirked and said, "That's a given. Anyway, I should head for dinner now. Then I need to practice. Brother Lucan should have sent the things to my room by now." Inwardly muttering to himself, he walked through the dimly lit corridor. Lumi continued to chat with him as he soon reached the front of the dining hall. Pushing open the gates, he saw that only Eldrick was sitting at the dining table today as well. The maids had already placed the plates and stood at the back, patiently waiting for the two of them to eat. "Good evening, lad." Eldrick smiled and greeted him. "Good evening, Grandpa." "Is Grandma still not back yet?" he asked as he came forward and sat in his usual seat. Eldrick shrugged and picked up a piece of bread to eat. "Still not back, will probably take a few more days." She needs to gather the materials after all. Orion nodded his head and picked up his food to eat. They continued to eat and chat, talking about the potential weapon. After having his fill, Orion stood up. I'll be studying primary runes now, Grandpa. I got the book from the library. Eldrick stroked his beard and pushed his plate back. Be careful and don't infuse too much mana into the pages. Even if you haven't formed your affinity rune, you should be able to somewhat control your mana. Orion nodded his head. I'll keep that in mind. Saying that, he turned around and left the dining hall. Outside, he saw Rune and Fiora standing patiently waiting for him. Walking out, he stretched his body. You both should go and do your own thing. I'll be quite busy next, he softly said. Rune and Fiora bowed. Then we will be at the library. If you need anything, just call us, Master, Rune said. We will be reading some books, Fiora shyly added before turning around and scurrying away. Rune giggled and followed after her. Orion stood alone, shaking his head with a smile. Aren't they quite energetic, Master? Of course they are. They're my dear maids, after all. Inwardly laughing to himself, he made his way toward his room. Once inside, Orion closed the heavy door behind him, feeling it shut with a click. The sound echoed briefly in the empty room. Mana lamps lit up the interior of the place with a gentle glow. His eyes drifted immediately toward the desk standing against the wall, right below the large window. On the desk were neatly placed several stacks of materials, pristine white sheets of mana-infused parchment, 2 bottles of rune-conductive ink that shimmered subtly under the light, delicate brushes of varying thicknesses crafted from soft beast hair, and a small but sturdy stand meant to hold the parchment firmly in place. A handwritten note rested atop the supplies, with neat handwriting. Young Master. I got all the items you requested. Included are rune-compatible parchment sheets, 2 bottles of conductive ink, and brushes. Good luck, and don't overexert yourself, Lil Lucan. Orion chuckled, shaking his head with amusement. Brother Lucan certainly knows how to write letters. Master, even Lucan has grown to understand your stubborn personality. You know, Lumi, you aren't exactly reassuring here. But I'm cute and supportive, no? Orion smirked, conceding slightly. Supportive, sure. Cute, well, let's leave that undecided. Moo. Master's standards are too high. You'll break a maiden's heart like this. He rolled his eyes, laughing softly as he moved closer to inspect the gathered materials. Drifting his finger lightly over the parchment, Orion felt a faint buzz of mana resonating softly against his own mana. Clearly, Lucan had asked the guards to purchase high-quality materials. Chapter 120, The Runic Codex. The mana-conductive ink sparkled gently within its crystal-clear glass bottles, hinting at the complexity of its ingredients. Orion uncorked one bottle and brought it closer, sniffing curiously. The ink smelled faintly of herbs and minerals, a pleasant, fresh scent. He nodded appreciatively, recapping the bottle and placing it carefully back down. Pulling the chair out, Orion sat down comfortably, stretching his arms once again, feeling a small ripple of excitement bubble up in his chest. All right, he murmured to himself. Time to see what the Academy's official guidebook has to offer. He reached into his inventory, his hand swiftly retrieving the leather-bound Runic language book. Pulling it out, Orion carefully laid it down on the desk in front of him. The book glowed softly under the room's ambient lighting, its dark leather embossed with intricate silver rune patterns that seemed to change subtly when viewed from different angles. He opened the cover gently, the pages rustling slightly beneath his touch, releasing a gentle fragrance of fresh paper mixed with traces of lingering mana. On the first page, written clearly and elegantly in flowing script, were the words: The Runic Codex, Fundamentals of the Runic Language and Application. Turning the pages, Orion saw the table of contents neatly organized, detailing various sections. Introduction to Runes and Mana Control. Understanding Resonance and Affinity. Comprehensive Guide to the 108 Primary Runes. Rune Combinations and Basic Spellcraft. Advanced Concepts and Rune Theory. troubleshooting common rune creation errors. Impressed by the depth and organization, Orion nodded approvingly. Not bad, huh, Lumi? Indeed. Seems like the Academy spared no expense. You're lucky, Master. Most common people would spend a fortune to get such a comprehensive book. Well, perks of being a student at Thunder Peak Academy, Orion mused, flipping to the introduction and beginning to read. The text began clearly. Runes represent the foundational pillars upon which all magical constructs and elemental manipulations are based. Each rune symbolizes a fundamental concept or element, carrying within itself both symbolic and literal power. The effectiveness of a rune depends heavily upon the caster's innate affinity, mental clarity, and precision in formation. Orion paused thoughtfully. Mental clarity and precision, huh? Sounds straightforward enough. But remember, Master, knowing is different from doing. Many mages struggle their whole lives trying to achieve the clarity mentioned here for high-level runes. True, Orion murmured softly, continuing to read the rest of the pages before reaching the next section detailing the concept of resonance. Resonance is the natural affinity one possesses with specific runes. Every individual resonates differently, influenced by lineage, personality, experiences, and elemental affinity. Those with high resonance form runes more naturally, while low resonance necessitates significantly greater mental effort. Lumi chimed softly in his mind, her voice filled with pride. This part is vital for most students, Master. But with your primal mana channels, your resonance is universal, yet neutral. You'll resonate equally with all runes. Orion chuckled quietly to himself. That's the fun part. Imagine the combinations I can make with all these different runes that others can't, due to their innate talent. Haha, I can't wait to learn more. Sarthanafire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He continued flipping through the pages, reaching the segment about the 108 primary runes. Here, the book showed beautifully illustrated symbols, each rune precisely detailed, accompanied by a clear description of its meaning and practical usage. He paused at the rune labeled Flow, which was written at the top of the page in elegant, fluid lines of symbols. Flow rune represents the fluid motion of mana and energy within and around the caster. Essential for regulating mana circulation, controlling spells, and stabilizing complex rune structures. Orion nodded thoughtfully. So this rune will be fundamental in almost every spell. Yes, Master. Flow is the rune that keeps most spells stable and manageable. Without it, your mana might go awry where you didn't intend it to. Like what happened last time when you lost control of it during Affinity rune creation. He winced slightly at the memory of his failed attempt at forming a darkness rune. Don't remind me. Lumi laughed cheerfully, ignoring his discomfort. Master learns best through pain, it seems. Ignoring her teasing, Orion turned several pages until he stopped again, this time at the rune barrier. Barrier rune. Embodies defensive constructs. Creates an energy barrier that stops physical and magical attacks. Mastery improves durability, range, and mana efficiency. Orion's eyes lit with intrigue. This will be quite handy in dangerous situations. Definitely. Especially given your penchant for attracting trouble. You'd better learn to make spells from it. Hey. I'm not looking for trouble all over the place. Orion playfully chided, though a smile tugged at his lips. He continued flipping leisurely, skimming various runes: ignite, freeze, amplify, stabilize, reflect, absorb. Each rune seemed both simple and profound, their functions overlapping yet distinct enough to be uniquely valuable. Oh? This rune book also has elemental runes? Fire, water, thunder, earth. All the basic elements are here. After giving them a quick glance, he flipped to the next page. His eyes lit up. Damn, runes of advanced elements are also here? Sound, shadow, blood, illusion, he slowly read one by one, and as expected, all 7 were present. His excitement surged as he quickly turned to the third page. He felt lightheaded as he saw two contrasting runes placed on one page of the book. Light and darkness. Holy fuck, how does the Academy have these? Or are these quite common? He couldn't control his excitement, this is what he had been longing for. Master, those are only light and darkness runes, not the structure of how to make them. You still need to learn more about how to make affinity runes before we can truly celebrate this treasure find. He took a deep breath to calm down. Yes, you're right. Let me finish reading this book first. Quickly glancing at the following pages filled with different types of runes, he stopped at a detailed section further into the book titled Advanced Concepts and Rune Theory. Here the writing grew denser and more sophisticated, discussing complex interactions between runes, theoretical frameworks for rune combination, and even hints at higher-tier runes which are accessible only to those above the 9th tier. Orion paused, deeply intrigued by a bolded passage. The true mastery of the runic language lies not merely in memorizing some runes but in understanding the hidden connections that can be drawn between them. Top powerhouses perceive runes not as isolated symbols but as living threads that can be used to connect with the fabric of mana. Orion paused here, mulling over the profundity of the text. Something within that passage felt quite important to him. Lumi, this feels quite important, Orion inwardly whispered with a slightly intrigued tone. Indeed, Master. This is exactly what differentiates a proficient mage from a legendary one. It's not just knowledge, it's understanding and experience. No mage becomes top tier in a day. They need time to accumulate knowledge and understand how to best use it. Orion nodded his head in agreement. I guess that's true. But the runes so far seem quite simple to me, except a few. As if I can learn them quickly. Wonderful. You're finally stepping onto the path of true mastery.